Yesterday, deep in the Pacific Ocean, a massive explosion rocked the world. Rumors were swirling that a Rank 9 Beast Emperor had broken through. Coastal cities were on high alert, bracing for the worst. Only a month ago, a gap in the defense grid of Liang City led to a beast tide that slaughtered tens of thousands of people. The news was a relentless stream of chaos. Liu Yang, a top graduate from Mudu Ability University, had just reached rank 5 and joined the Grey Forbidden Guild. Meanwhile, over in the United States, an S-class talent had finally emerged after 4 years, someone with the power of elemental analysis. I stared at my phone screen, my head throbbing. I rubbed my temples, trying to make sense of the memories flooding my brain. I had definitely traveled to another world. This place was called Blue Star. It looked like my old home, but with two terrifying differences: monsters and superpowers. The former were bloodthirsty creatures ravaging the planet. The latter was humanity's only hope for survival. How did I end up here? All I did was drink a little too much at my grad school party. I woke up in the body of a high school senior who shared my name, Su Jingming. Aside from being unusually handsome, this version of me was painfully average. Even the ability I had awakened was the lowest of the low, a rank E talent called weak electricity. I looked down at my right hand and snapped my fingers. Tiny, flickering blue sparks danced between my fingertips. In my old world, this would have been a cool party trick. Here, it was a joke. On Blue Star, everyone awakens an ability at 16. Some control fire, some transform into beasts, and others can heal the dying. But there's a strict hierarchy. Most people end up with rank E or D. Only the lucky few hit rank C or B. Rank A and S are the elite, the children of heaven. As for SS or SSS, those are legends that only appear once every few decades. 2 years ago, during my awakening ceremony, I got exactly what I expected: rank E. Weak electricity. Even though lightning-type powers are usually top tier, a rank E rating meant my lethality was non-existent. The sparks on my fingers were weaker than a cheap stun gun. Was I really brought to this world just to be a human battery? I wanted to be a powerhouse. I wanted to shake the world. I sighed, resting my chin on my hand as I looked around the classroom. It was break time, and my classmates were chatting excitedly. On the blackboard, a countdown clock stared back at me. 1 day left until the Gaokao. In Great Xia, June 7th is the day that decides your fate. If you pass the exams and get into an ability university, you become part of the elite. You get prestige, money, and power. But to get in, you have to be more than just an awakened. You have to become a true, evolved warrior. For a rank E loser like me, the chances of getting in were 0. Aren't there supposed to be perks for people who cross over? I muttered to myself. Where's my system? As if on cue, a cold, electronic voice rang out in my head. Deep Blue system activating. Success. Newbie package identified. Would you like to claim it? My eyes widened and my jaw dropped. It was real. I felt a surge of pure adrenaline. As a fan of web novels, I knew exactly what this meant. This was my ticket to the top. I took a deep breath to steady my racing heart. I didn't claim it immediately. Instead, I asked the system what was inside. 200 evolution points and the SSS-Rank ability, Purple Cloud Divine Thunder. SSS-Rank? My breath hitched. I didn't know what the points did yet, but I knew what an SSS-Rank ability meant. The news just said the US found an S-class after 4 years, and Great Xia hadn't seen one in 3. An S-class user is a future titan, a guardian of the nation. And I was getting something even better. If I claim this, I really get an SSS-Rank power? I asked, needing to be sure. Yes, the system replied. This was it. My life was about to change. Jingming, stop daydreaming. Old Chun is here, my teammate whispered, nudging me. I snapped back to reality. Our homeroom teacher, Chun Fan, was walking toward the podium. I forced myself to stay calm. Claiming a legendary power in the middle of a crowded classroom was a bad idea. I had to wait until I got home. 12 years of hard work comes down to this, Chun Fan announced, his voice echoing in the quiet room. The Gaokao is tomorrow. Stay focused. If you're taking the liberal arts track, check your stationery. If you're on the martial track, prep your combat suits and weapons. I leaned back, my mind racing. In Great Xia, universities were split into 2 worlds. And tomorrow, I wasn't just going to pass. I was going to dominate. Universities in our world were split into two paths. One was for liberal arts, where students studied culture and knowledge. The other was for martial arts, dedicated to training superpowered warriors. Naturally, the Gaokao followed suit. The liberal arts exam was simple. You just sat in a classroom and answered questions. But the martial arts exam was a different beast. Candidates had to don combat suits, arm themselves with weapons, and enter designated zones to fight life-and-death battles against fierce beasts. Your final score depended entirely on the number and species of monsters you killed. The choice was ours. If you lacked confidence or awakened a useless ability, you could choose the liberal arts track and live as an ordinary person. My predecessor had only awakened a level 1 ability, yet he had still chosen the martial track. I respected that. In this world, if you didn't fight, you were destined to be a nobody. I'll say it one last time, Old Chen announced, his voice stern. The martial arts Gaokao carries a real risk of death. If your awakened ability is below D rank, I don't recommend it. You have until 9 tonight to change your mind. If you want to switch, come see me. Class dismissed. Before leaving, Chun Fan shot a meaningful look in my direction. I rubbed my nose, knowing exactly what he was thinking. In Class 5, I was the only student crazy enough to choose the martial track with a mere level 1 ability. Statistically, most people who died in the exam were those with abilities below D rank. I knew Old Chun was worried, but in a world like this, living without power wasn't really living. To prevent beast invasions, Great Xia built high-voltage fences and stationed armies in every city. But it wasn't foolproof. Every few years, a city would be overrun, and thousands would perish. I didn't want to be a helpless victim when that day came. Even with a level 1 ability, I would have fought. But now I had something much better coming. I packed my bag, my eyes sharp. Jingming, you're really not going to change your mind? I looked up. It was Zhang Hao, my best friend. He had a bowl cut and a concerned face. He had also awakened a level 1 ability, but he had given up on the martial path 2 years ago to focus on his studies. No, I said, shaking my head. You're a legend, Zhang Hao said, giving me a thumbs up. Out of all the level 1s in the martial class, you're the only one brave enough to stick with it. Why? Want to join me? I teased. No thanks. I'm going to a liberal arts college to spend 4 years surrounded by girls. I'll leave this saving the world stuff to heroes like you. Get lost. I laughed, rolling my eyes. I left the classroom and headed home. My parents had died in a beast tide when I was 10. They left me a house and about 1 million credits in compensation, but that was it. I lived alone. Since I was an orphan in my previous life too, the silence didn't bother me. I had work to do. Starter pack, here I come, I whispered. I pulled up the blue system interface in my mind and hit the claim button. Starter pack issued. 200 evolution points received. SSS-Rank ability. Purple Cloud Divine Thunder, initiating transfer. Progress, 10%, 20%, 30%. Boom. A massive surge of power exploded inside me. Bluish-purple electrical arcs began dancing across my skin, flickering wildly. I felt like I was turning into a ball of living lightning. The air hissed and crackled. Suddenly, the lightning expanded outward in a violent wave, swallowing the living room. The sofa, the TV, the coffee table, everything the lightning touched shattered instantly. The blast wave shattered the windows, sending glass and fire pouring out into the street. Mom, the big brother's house across the street is on fire, a child screamed outside. Is that the Su family's kid? A neighbor shouted. Call the fire department. I didn't hear them. I was lost in a sea of warmth and raw power. 50%, 60%, 70%. Outside, the clear afternoon sky turned pitch black. Thick, heavy clouds rolled in, plunging the city into an artificial night. There was no rain, only the low, oppressive rumble of thunder. Purple lightning snaked through the clouds like dragons. Why did it get so dark? That lightning looks terrifying. I feel like I can't breathe. In the city's command center, the 3rd Legion went on high alert. The sudden, eerie weather had the entire city of Jiangcheng in a panic. They feared a high-level beast capable of controlling weather was attacking. 80%, 90%, 99%. Inside the house, The transformation reached its peak. A bolt of pure purple lightning tore through the sky, crashed through my broken window, and slammed directly into my chest. The clouds immediately began to vanish, and the sun returned as if nothing had happened. Inside, the progress bar hit 100%. The lightning surrounding me pulled back into my body like a receding tide. I snapped my eyes open, a flash of purple light darting through my pupils. I felt incredible. I raised my right hand and gave a small thought. Instantly, ancient, terrifying purple sparks danced around my fingers. This wasn't the weak, blue-white electricity I had before. This was the purple cloud divine thunder. I had a feeling that if I hit a person with this, they wouldn't just be shocked, they would be erased. I looked around at my ruined living room and scratched my head. The place looked like it had been hit by a missile. Everything was in pieces, and some of the debris was still on fire. Well, I muttered, looking at my stats. That was a bit much. Now, let's see about these points. I looked around my living room and winced. The walls and floor were covered in deep, jagged craters where the electric arcs had struck. If I hadn't realized something was wrong during the transformation and fought to suppress my power, this entire apartment building would have been history, not just my living room. I felt a cold sweat run down my back. The purple cloud divine thunder came from ancient Eastern myths. It was one of the 10 original primal thunders, capable of slaying immortals and killing gods. Even though I was only at the awakened level and couldn't unleash its full potential, letting it run wild would have blasted right through the floor and brought the whole building down. I would have survived the collapse, but my neighbors wouldn't have been so lucky. I really underestimated this power. If I'd known the transformation would be this violent, I would have claimed my starter pack in the middle of nowhere. Still, I wasn't complaining. The stronger the ability, the better my future looked. Then I remembered the other reward. I had 200 energy points sitting in my inventory. I wondered what they were for. As if answering my thought, the system's voice echoed in my head. Energy points could be earned by killing ferocious beasts. I could spend them to level up my stats or upgrade my skills. I opened my system panel and saw the options immediately. It was just like a video game. Kill monsters, get experience, level up. It was a simple system, but I liked simple. It was effective. I pulled up my stats to take a look. Name, Su Jingming. Level, Awakened. Ability, Purple Cloud Divine Thunder, S-Rank. Physique, 121 Blood Chi, plus. Spirit, 140 Hz, plus. Skills, Spearmanship, Elementary Grade I. Lightning Wind Break, Elementary Grade I. Energy Points, 200. The layout was clean. The plus signs next to my stats showed me exactly what I could upgrade. Physique and Spirit were the two core attributes for any Awakened. Mine were actually pretty good already. Most people started around 100. However, seeing my spearmanship level made me frown. I'd practiced the spear for 5 or 6 years, and I was still only at elementary grade I. That felt like a slap in the face. In this world, people used weapons alongside their abilities. Most chose swords or blades, but I'd picked the long spear when I was 10 years old. Skill mastery was ranked from elementary, intermediate, and advanced, all the way up to master, grandmaster, and perfection. Being stuck at elementary meant I was basically a beginner. As for lightning windbreak, that was a spear technique I'd bought for 300,000 great xia coins after I first awakened my weak electricity power at 16. I'd only been practicing it for 2 years, so I guess an elementary rating was fair. I stared at the 200 points. I could boost my attributes or my skills. The college entrance exams were tomorrow, and I needed to spend these points where they would count the most. If I boosted my physique and spirit, my overall combat power and ability control would increase across the board. Deep blue, add points, I muttered, focusing on my attributes. I split the 200 points evenly between physique and spirit. Immediately, I felt my blood boil. It surged through my veins like a rushing river. My mind cleared, and my thoughts became razor-sharp. Even my connection to the purple cloud divine thunder felt tighter. I gripped my fist, feeling the raw power thrumming under my skin. I checked the panel again. Physique, 141 Blood Chi Spirit, 160 Hz. Each attribute had gone up by 20 points. That meant 1 energy point equaled 0.2 units. The conversion rate was a bit low, but it was a direct, side-effect-free boost. I wished I had more, but this was enough. With an S-rank ability, I was already near the top of the pack for the Jiangnan province exams. Now, with these boosted stats, I was officially among the elite. I wasn't the strongest yet, though. Jiangnan had 80 million people and over 700,000 exam candidates. There were always monsters in that crowd. Some of them might only have A-rank abilities, but they came from rich families. They had master teachers, rare techniques, and bodyguards to escort them into the wilderness to hunt real beasts for experience. As an orphan, I couldn't compete with their resources, but they couldn't compete with my S-rank thunder, either. Boom. A sudden, violent crash echoed through the room. Before I could even react, my front door was kicked off its hinges and sent flying across the floor. A group of firefighters in orange gear rushed in, clutching high-pressure hoses. They stopped dead when they saw me. There was no fire, just a guy standing in a ruined living room. Hey guys, I said, blinking at them. I had to spend the next 10 minutes explaining that I had a lightning ability and that I'd already controlled the situation. They did a sweep of the apartment to make sure there weren't any hidden embers. Before they left, they actually fixed my door. The captain even handed me a business card. He told me my lightning ability was perfect for handling fires in electronic facilities. He said if I wanted a job after college, I should look him up at the Jiangxing Fire Department. It was a stable government job, and in the eyes of most people, it was a great career. But for me, I had much bigger plans than fighting fires. I tossed the firefighter's business card into my bedside drawer without a second thought. I had no intention of spending my life putting out electrical fires. I grabbed my long spear, which was leaning against the wall, and headed out the door. Xiaoming, are you okay? Was there a fire? It was Uncle Yang, one of my neighbors. He looked worried. I'm fine, Uncle Yang, I replied with a reassuring smile. It's already under control. That's good to hear. Heading to the martial arts hall. Yeah, just going to get some practice in. Uncle Yang shook his head in admiration. You're so hardworking. The college entrance exam is tomorrow, and you're still training. I wish my brat had half your drive. I'd lived in the Manhwa apartment complex for 18 years. Everyone knew me here, and I'd always been the polite, quiet kid the older generation liked. As I walked downstairs, several aunts and uncles walking their grandkids stopped to check on me. I answered them all politely, my spear slung across my back, before heading out of the complex. I took a bus, transferred to the subway, and finally stood before a massive, modern skyscraper. It was about 40 meters high, clad in sleek silver-white panels that shimmered like a predator's scales under the sun. It was a beast of a building. Huge, flowing calligraphy on the side of the structure proudly displayed its name, the Thunder Martial Arts Hall. To advance from a mere awakened to a true powered user, you had to push your body and spirit to the limit. Not everyone could afford a private training room, so martial arts halls filled the gap. In the Great Xia Federation, two names stood above the rest, Thunder and Raging Bear. They had branches in every city. Even here, in the relatively remote Jiangxing, the Thunder Martial Arts Hall was a landmark. There were dozens of smaller private gyms in the city, but Thunder was the only one that offered free access to high school students. That was why I always came here. Today, I needed to see exactly how much my stats had jumped after obtaining the Purple Cloud Divine Thunder. Outside the entrance, other awakened, and even some established powered users were arriving, weapons in hand. The founder of this place, Luo Hong, was a rank 9 powerhouse with an S-rank lightning ability. As I looked up at the building, I couldn't help but wonder if one day I'd be strong enough to build a legacy like this. I shook off the thought and walked inside. The hall had 6 floors, each spanning tens of thousands of square meters. The second and third floors were reserved for high schoolers. Since it was Wednesday, the juniors and sophomores were still in class, and most seniors were at home resting for tomorrow's big exam. The third floor, usually packed and noisy, was surprisingly quiet. There were only about a dozen people in the main lobby. Then, I spotted a familiar face. She was about 5'7", with sharp, cold features and long, straight legs emphasized by denim shorts. She didn't have a weapon and was surrounded by a group of trendy, well-dressed teenagers. Sister Chi, you're here at Thunder. I called out, walking over. This was Tang Chi, my cousin. She was also a senior, just a few months older than me. My parents had passed away when I was young, so my aunt often checked in on me, sometimes bringing Tang-Chi along. We weren't close, but we weren't enemies either. My past self had been too introverted, and our families lived in different worlds. 2 years ago, when she awakened a B-rank ability and I only managed an E-rank, the gap between us became a canyon. Tang-Chi looked surprised to see me. She gave a small, stiff nod. Yeah, I'm just accompanying some friends. That made sense. Her family was wealthy. She usually trained at the Raging Bear Hall, where the annual membership fee was a staggering 100,000 credits. She rarely set foot in a public place like this. I see, I said. Well, I'll leave you to it. I'm heading to the training rooms. I didn't linger. I gave a quick wave and walked away. Chi-Chi, who was that? He's actually pretty handsome, a girl in a sundress asked as soon as I was out of earshot. Her eyes followed me with a hint of curiosity. That's Lin Yuan, my cousin, Tang-Chi replied, her brow furrowed. He's a senior too, taking the martial arts exam tomorrow. She looked confused. Lin Yuan felt different today. Usually, he was too shy to even look her in the eye, let alone initiate a conversation. Why are you asking so many questions, Xia? You looking for a boyfriend? A guy in a white tracksuit teased. Xia didn't miss a beat. So what if I am? With looks like that, as long as his strength isn't total trash, he'd be great arm candy. Tang-Chi shook her head, killing the mood instantly. I'm afraid he'll disappoint you then. He only awakened an E-rank ability. The curiosity in Xia's eyes died instantly. Only E-rank. What a waste. In their world, circles were defined by background and talent. These kids all had rich parents and B or C rank abilities. Looking at my cheap clothes and hearing about my bottom-tier rank, they lost interest faster than a falling stone. An E-rank actually dares to take the martial arts exam? A guy with an earring laughed. Give him points for courage, I guess. Courage won't keep him alive, Tang-Chi sighed. The death rate for anyone below D rank in the exam is horrifying. I wish he'd just take the civil service exam instead. He could be a white-collar worker, stay safe, and not give his mother, my aunt, a heart attack every day. But he won't listen. Anyway, forget about him. The guy with the earrings said. I've spent 3 years at Raging Bear. I want to see if Thunder really lives up to the hype. The group decided to drop the subject. They could see Tang-Chi was in a bad mood, and they didn't want to ruin their pre-exam relaxation. They figured a little stroll would be good for their mental health before the big day, so they wandered off toward the other facilities. Meanwhile, I had no idea I was the topic of their conversation. I had already checked into a private training room provided by the Thunder Dojo. It was a small space, maybe 20 square meters, but it was all I needed. Normally, you have to book these rooms weeks in advance, but since the place was empty today, I walked right in. First, I wanted to test my peak strength without using my ability. I reached back and unsheathed my spear. Monsters have incredibly thick hides, so standard weapons are useless against them. Every serious fighter uses gear from specialized manufacturers. My spear was from the Obsidian series, produced by the Pang Yuan Group. The shaft was nearly 2 meters long, topped with a razor-sharp 20-centimeter head. The whole thing was forged from a high-grade alloy, finished in a dull, low-profile black. I gave the spear a quick flick. The metal hummed with a low, sharp ring. But something felt wrong. The spear felt light. I frowned, then realized the truth. The weapon hadn't changed, my body had. I was significantly stronger than I was yesterday. I couldn't afford a new weapon now anyway. Alloys are ranked just like abilities, SSS down to F. The rarer the alloy, the tougher and deadlier it is, and the more it costs. I had paid nearly 200,000 yuan for this obsidian spear, customized to weigh exactly 50 kilograms. Martial arts is a rich man's game. Between training, gear, and combat techniques, I had drained almost everything. Some of the money came from my aunt's family, and the rest was from my parents' savings and their death benefits. I had less than 5,000 yuan left in my bank account. It'll have to do, I muttered. A slightly light weapon would affect my rhythm, but I could adapt. I started my warm-up. I'd been training with a spear since I was 12. For 6 years, the basic moves, thrusting, parrying, smashing, and lunging, had been drilled into my muscle memory. I moved, and the spear became a black blur in the room. I could feel my blood pumping and my muscles loosening up. Suddenly, I lunged. The spear tip slammed into the circular target on the wall with an ear-piercing crack. The target was made of memory metal. It dented deeply under the force before slowly popping back into shape. I looked at the digital screen on the wall. 321 kg force. My eyes widened. Strength is measured in kg force, where 1 unit is roughly the energy of a heavy firecracker. Most awakened fighters only hit around 100. Before today, my raw physical limit was 140. I had more than doubled my strength. But that was just my body. Now, it was time for the real test. I called upon the purple cloud divine thunder. Purple lightning erupted from my skin, coiling around me like snakes. The air hissed with the sound of jumping electricity. I felt like a god of storms. I pointed a finger at the target, and a bolt of purple lightning streaked across the room. The memory metal target buckled instantly. It stayed deformed for nearly 10 seconds before it even began to reset. The screen flashed a new number, 3012. I gasped. 3,000? That was 10 times my physical strength. A typical rank, one fighter usually caps out at 1,000. 3,000 was the territory of a mid-tier rank, one professional. And I wasn't even a rank, one professional yet. I was just a student who had just awakened. The gap between an E rank and an S rank ability was even bigger than I had imagined. But I can go higher, I whispered. I gripped my spear, letting the purple electricity flow into the obsidian shaft. I channeled everything into one move, Flash Gale Break. I lunged. The spear transformed into a violet-black dragon. Boom. The impact shook the entire training room. Lightning flared, blindingly bright. When the light faded, the target was gone. The center of the memory metal had literally melted into a smoking crater. Cracks webbed out across the entire wall like a giant spider web, exposing sparking cables underneath. I looked at the screen. It was blank. The system had crashed. This was a basic training room designed to withstand hits from high-tier rank, 1 fighters. By breaking the equipment, I had proven my attack power was now on par with a top-level professional. Flash Gale Break was the only combat technique I owned. I had spent a long time picking it because it perfectly blended spear work with lightning. It was worth every penny. A confident smile played on my lips as I shouldered my spear. If I could hit this hard, tomorrow's exam was going to be very interesting. I walked out of the room, leaving the smoking wreckage for the maintenance crew. I had seen enough. I didn't have to worry about paying for the damage. In a place like the Thunder Dojo, anyone strong enough to wreck the equipment was exactly the kind of person they wanted to recruit. As I walked through the halls, I overheard some familiar voices. It was Tang Chi and her group. Honestly, our Raging Bear Dojo is so much better, one of the boys said, sounding bored. The training rooms here are tiny, and the gear is outdated. Well, yeah, another replied. We pay 100,000 coins a year for our memberships. You get what you pay for. This is getting dull, Tang Chi said. I thought coming here would help us relax before the exam, but I'm bored out of my mind. How about we head to the combat rooms for a few rounds, someone suggested. They all seemed to like that idea. But before they could move, a massive, muffled boom echoed through the corridor. Then another. The ground beneath their feet actually trembled. What was that? Xiaoya, the girl in the sundress, frowned. The real monsters usually train at Raging Bear. Why would someone like that be here at Thunder? Jiang City wasn't exactly a hub for top-tier talent, but there were always 1 or 2 freaks who broke through to become true awakened fighters before graduation. Was one of them here? Or had a new genius just been born? Let's go check it out, Tang Chi said. Her interest finally peaked. I was already halfway down the hall when they rounded the corner. I had my 2-meter-long obsidian spear strapped to my back, my mind focused on the next day. I didn't expect to run into them again so soon. Tang Chi froze when she saw me. Lin Yuan, you're still here. Just finished training, I said simply. I'm heading home to get ready. Right. Well, good luck with the 5-subject exam tomorrow, she said. She still looked like she thought I was suicidal for signing up. Just stay safe, okay? I knew what she was thinking. To her, an E-rank student like me was just fodder for the monsters. Thanks, Chi. You too, I said with a grin. I walked past them without stopping. I didn't need to explain myself. My results would do the talking soon enough. Tang Chi and her friends didn't wait around either. They hurried toward the source of the noise. There were only 8 training rooms in this section, so it didn't take them long to find the one I had just vacated. When they stepped inside, they stopped dead. The room was a wreck. The walls were webbed with deep cracks, and the testing pillar, made of high-grade memory metal, was partially melted. It looked like a bomb had gone off. Good Lord! The guy in the white tracksuit breathed, his eyes wide. He melted memory metal? How much power does that take? The guy with the ear stud, who had a mental type ability, stepped closer to the crater. I can still feel the residual energy. It's violent. Whoever did this, they have to be at the peak of rank 1. Maybe even rank 2. Rank 2, Xiaoya gasped. In Jiang City, there's no way a high schooler is that strong. It probably wasn't a student, Tang Chi reasoned, though she looked shaken. Maybe a professional fighter wandered into the student section by mistake and decided to test their strength. The others nodded, looking relieved. The idea of a peer being that powerful was too much to handle. If a student had already reached rank 2, the rest of them might as well give up and go home. Wait, Xiaoya said, her eyes blinking rapidly. Lin Yuan was the only one who walked past us from this direction. Do you think maybe he's a secret genius? Like those main characters in web novels who hide their power to shock everyone? The guy with the ear stud laughed. You've been reading too many stories. Lin Yuan, an E-rank? He'd be lucky to hit 300 kilograms. The exit is at the other end of the hall, too. That professional fighter probably left through the back. True, Xiaoya agreed. Potential is everything. An E-rank is capped from the start. Tang Chi didn't say anything. She kept thinking about my back as I walked away. I had looked so calm, so steady. For a split second, she wondered if she had been wrong about me. The next morning, I woke up early. The sun was just beginning to hit the skyline of Jiang City. Today was the day. The standard written exams were held at the local schools, but the 5-subject exam, the real martial arts test, took place at the military zone on the outskirts of the city. We had to gather at the city stadium by 8 a.m. to be bussed out. I suited up. I strapped on my obsidian spear and pulled on my L-rank black combat suit. It was made from high-tier beast hide, designed to resist claws and teeth while remaining flexible. I laced up my combat boots, feeling the weight of the gear. I'm ready, I whispered to the empty room. Across town, in the wealthy Jinxiu Villa district, Tang Chi was finishing her own breakfast. She was wearing a sleek, form-fitting combat suit designed for speed. Her B-rank ability, Shadow Cat, made her incredibly agile, so she carried twin daggers. Chi, her mother called out as she headed for the door. You're in the same testing zone as Lin Yuan, right? Mom, I told you, Tang Chi sighed. There's only one testing zone for the whole city. Of course we're in the same place. If you see him, try to help him, her mother said softly. He only has an E-rank ability. That exam is dangerous. Tang Chi nodded, even though she knew the testing grounds were massive. The chances of bumping into a specific person were almost zero. I'll do what I can, Mom. Don't worry. She climbed into her family's private car and headed for the stadium. Jiang City had 3 high schools with about 3,000 seniors total. Nearly half of them, 1,400 students, had signed up for the 5-subject exam. The city had deployed 40 buses and a small army of staff to move us all. As I stood in the crowd at the stadium, surrounded by nervous teenagers and heavy weaponry, I felt the electricity humming under my skin. The wait was over. It was time to show them what an E-rank could really do. More than 40 buses were lined up neatly outside the city stadium. They were organized by school and class, waiting to ferry us to the exam site. I watched as other students arrived. Some were alone, but many were accompanied by their parents. Son, I don't care how high your score is, I heard one father say. Just stay safe. That's what matters. I know, Dad, the boy replied, his voice shaking slightly. Protect yourself out there, honey, a mother whispered nearby. The air was thick with these final goodbyes. Seeing them, I felt a familiar pang in my chest. In my past life, I was an orphan. I had always craved that kind of parental love. Now, even after crossing over into this world, I was still alone. I took a deep breath and pushed the emotion down. I had a job to do. I scanned the rows of vehicles until I found the bus for Jiang City Second High School, Class 5. I gripped my spear and stepped on board. Wait, is that Lin Yuan? Someone whispered. I never noticed before, but he looks actually handsome in that combat suit. Since when did he have such a sharp vibe? Look at him. In my predecessor's time, I was the invisible kid. I was introverted and kept my head down. Unless I missed class, nobody besides my best friend Zhang Hao and our teacher, Chen Fan, even noticed I existed. To be fair, the original Lin Yuan had the raw materials. He was 6'1" and had good features, but he used to slouch and avoid eye contact. Now, I stood bone straight. My eyes were clear and focused. Dressed in my sleek black combat suit with the massive, jagged obsidian spear strapped to my back, I looked like a different person. I looked dangerous. I felt the gazes of several girls in the class turn toward me, their eyes wide and curious. Even Chen Fan, who was sitting in the front passenger seat checking off names, looked stunned for a second. He recovered quickly and checked my name off the list. Once the last student arrived, Chen Fan stood up. Class 5 is all here. Let's move out. The bus lurched forward. The 5-subject exam was the biggest event in the Great Xia Federation. For the past month, the city had been under a noise ordinance to ensure we slept well. Some high-end neighborhoods even hired sound-based ability users to create silence barriers every night at 9. Today, the security was even tighter. The roads were cleared, and armed soldiers and ability user squads patrolled the intersections. Our convoy of 40 buses moved through the city without hitting a single red light, heading straight for the military zone on the outskirts. When we finally pulled into a massive clearing, we were ordered off the buses. Soldiers stood every 3 meters, rifles held tight, faces like stone. There was no doubt, if anyone tried to cause trouble here, they'd be met with a hail of bullets. At the front of the clearing was a temporary stage. Behind it, a massive area was cordoned off by high wire fences. It was a ruined town, stretching further than the eye could see. I could see dark shadows flickering between the crumbled buildings and hear the distant, chilling roars of monsters. So that's the testing ground, someone gulped. Holy crap, did you see that? I think I just saw a one-horned lizard. A one-horned lizard? No way. They wouldn't make the exam that brutal this year, would they? This place was called Weiyuan Town. Decades ago, it was overrun by beasts and reduced to rubble. The military eventually took it back, but instead of rebuilding, they turned it into a training ground. For the exam, the types of monsters inside were carefully chosen by the provincial examiners to ensure the difficulty was the same for every city. Usually, the outskirts only had common beasts like shadow cats or iron-haired pigs. But seeing a one-horned lizard meant the difficulty had been cranked up. The risk of dying just skyrocketed. A few students turned pale. One girl looked like she was about to faint. So what if it's a one-horned lizard? A loud, sharp voice rang out, cutting through the chatter. If you can't even handle a beast like that, you'll never make it as an ability user anyway. I turned toward the voice. It was a young man in a pale green combat suit. He held a long sword and carried himself like an ancient swordsman, sharp, upright, and intense. His eyes reminded me of a hawk. Some students looked ready to argue, but as soon as they saw who it was, they shut their mouths and looked away. Who's the guy with the big mouth? I whispered to a tall student next to me. His name was Lu Ji. He had a C-rank giantization ability that let him double his size. He was one of the few people I was actually friendly with in class. Lu Ji curled his lip. Who else? That's the Breeze Sword, Zhou Mingyang, from First High School. I nodded. That explained it. First High was the elite school. They had actual ability users as teachers and did live combat training with beasts. Almost all the top 10 scorers in the city came from there. Zhou Mingyang was their star. He had a B-rank wind ability called Clear Spirit Gale. It let him condense wind into blades and strip away air resistance, making his movement and attacks incredibly fast. He was one of the few students who had already broken through to become a professional-level ability user before the exam even started. He was the heavy favorite to be the city's top scorer. A swordsman needs that kind of unstoppable momentum. I heard the principal of First High whisper nearby, looking at Zhou with pride. I shifted the weight of my spear. Zhou Mingyang was impressive, sure, but he wasn't the only one who had been training. I looked back at the ruins, the lightning in my veins humming in anticipation. It was time to see who was really the predator in that town. I nodded to myself, feeling the weight of my spear. Soon, the space was packed as students from over 40 buses filled the clearing. We stood in neat rows, organized by school and class, with our teachers standing guard at the front of each line. A man in a military uniform stepped onto the podium. He was tall, built like a tank, with a jagged scar running down his right cheek. He didn't say a word. He just swept his gaze across the crowd, and the constant chatter died instantly. If Zhou Mingyang's eyes felt like a hawk's, this man's gaze felt like a prehistoric predator's. It sent a shiver down my spine. This guy was definitely a rank 2 ability user or higher. Quiet, he said. His voice wasn't loud, and he didn't use a microphone, but it rang clearly in everyone's ears. I am Wang Haiyang, the chief commander for the Jiangxing martial arts exam. Before we begin, I will restate the rules. He gestured to the ruins behind him. The exam starts at 9 a.m. sharp and ends at 9 p.m. 12 hours. The testing ground is the ruined town. It is divided into 3 zones: the outskirts, the central area, and the core. He paced the podium. The outskirts contain unranked beasts. The central area holds peak unranked and rank 1 beasts. The core is strictly for rank 1 and above. At the very center, you will find high-tier rank 1s and even rank 2 beasts. I listened, mapping it out in my head. It was just like a math exam. The different zones were different difficulty levels. The heart of the town was the final, high-value bonus question meant only for the elite students. Before my breakthrough, I would have stuck to the outskirts. Now, I wasn't just confident about the core, I wanted to see what that rank 2 beast looked like. Different beasts grant different points, Wang Haiyang continued. The higher the rank, the higher the score. But know your limits. Don't throw your life away for points you can't handle. Now, take your gear. A line of soldiers stepped forward as a heavy truck rumbled up. They began handing out black tactical backpacks to every student. I grabbed mine and checked the contents. There were 3 items inside. First, a smartwatch to track kills, calculate points, and show my GPS location on a map of the town. Second, 3 compressed energy bars for quick stamina recovery. Finally, a silver metal sphere, a safety ball. If you're about to die, activate the ball, the commander shouted. It generates a high-voltage grid that most beasts can't break. But remember, the moment you pop that ball, your exam is over. I strapped the watch to my wrist and stuffed the energy bars into the bag. I clipped the safety ball to my belt where I could reach it in a split second. Most students did the same, though we all knew the truth. In a real fight, death happens in a heartbeat. Sometimes, you don't even have time to reach for the ball. It's 8:40 a.m., Wang Haiyang announced, stepping down. You have 20 minutes. The tension broke, replaced by desperate whispering. People were scrambling. Any teams need a tank? I have a rank B Earth-type ability. Mental-type C-rank here. I can stun beasts. Who needs me? We need a high-damage dealer, D-rank or higher. The exam allowed teaming up, but the points were split among the members. Usually, the top students went solo to maximize their scores, but after seeing the scale of this ruined town, even the confident ones were looking for backup. Lin Yuan, you haven't joined a team yet, right? I turned around. A girl in a sleek, silver combat suit was walking toward me. It was Lin Xingyuan, our class monitor. She was pretty, popular, and honestly, too nice for her own good. Ever since she found out my parents had passed away, she'd been looking out for me in her own quiet way. The old Lin Yuan thought she had a crush on him. I knew better. She just had a hero complex. We need one more for support damage, she said with a warm smile. Your lightning ability would be perfect for finishing off beasts. I glanced past her. Her teammates looked like they had just swallowed lemons. They didn't want an E-rank dead weight dragging down their score, but they couldn't argue with their captain. I'm going solo, monitor, I said, shaking my head. You guys go ahead. She looked surprised, her eyes widening. Solo? Lin Yuan, it's dangerous out there. You don't have to act tough. I'm not, I said firmly. I've already decided. She sighed, realizing I wouldn't budge. Fine. Just stay safe, okay? As she walked back to her group, I saw her teammates visibly relax. One of them even muttered, at least the kid knows his place. Lu Ji, the tall student from earlier, elbowed me in the ribs. Man, you just turned down a goddess. Do you know how many guys would kill to be on her team? I just gripped my spear and looked toward the town. The sun was climbing higher. The gates were about to open. I didn't need a team. I needed a target. Lu Jie leaned in close, a greasy, mischievous grin plastered across his face. Man, you know how our class monitor is. She's got a soft spot for the weak and the broken. It's her nature to help. I rolled my eyes. Oh, is that it? I thought you were going to tell me she was madly in love with me. Lu Jie gasped in mock surprise. Then his expression turned serious. But for real, are you actually going in solo? This exam is no joke. With only an E-rank ability, you're going to get eaten alive. Look, if you're willing to call me Big Brother, I might just take pity on you and carry you through. He flipped his hair back with a flourish. Before he awakened his C-rank ability, Lu Jie used to be quiet, almost shy. Now he was a total show-off. Even though he sounded like a jerk, I knew he was just worried about me. He was a good friend, even if his way of showing it was annoying. I let out a dry, exaggerated laugh. You? Carry me? That's the funniest thing I've heard all day. I leaned in, wearing a mysterious smile. To tell you the truth, I'm not the same person I was yesterday. I'm going for the title of top scholar of Jiangnan province. But hey, if you're willing to call me Dad, I might be persuaded to drag you into the top 100. I flipped my hair back, mimicking his ridiculous gesture. That's just how guys are, always competing to see who gets to be the father of the group. Top scholar. Lu Jie's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Man, I never knew you could brag like this. If Zhang Hao were here, he'd laugh until his teeth fell out. I shook my head and sighed. See? Nobody believes the truth anymore. The world is going to hell. We kept trading jabs as the minutes ticked by. Then, the clock hit 9. The heavy gates leading into the ruined town creaked open. Soldiers stood guard as Wang Haiyang stepped onto the podium. His voice boomed across the square. The 2037th Jiangxing Martial Arts exam officially begins. Candidates, enter the field. Over 1,400 students surged forward like a swarm of locusts. The air was thick with excitement and desperate hope. Everyone wanted a spot at the Jiangnan Awakened University. I felt the adrenaline kick in. I grabbed my spear and joined the rush, laughing as I ran into the maw of the ruins. The town swallowed us whole. Behind us, the open ground became empty in seconds. High above, military drones took flight. In this world, the martial arts exam was a national event, broadcast live for everyone to see. Education officials, principals, and even younger students back at school would be watching the feeds. Thousands of hidden cameras in the ruins flickered to life, tracking the star candidates who already had reputations to uphold. The ruins of the town were massive. Once we passed the initial bottleneck of the entrance, the crowd dispersed. I felt like a single drop of water falling into a vast ocean. The beasts here weren't mindless. They were smart. They didn't attack the massive crowd immediately. Instead, they retreated into the shadows, waiting for us to scatter. Teams and solo hunters began pushing deeper into the debris. I saw Zhou Mingyang, the clear wind sword from the first high school, use his wind ability to sprint ahead like a cheetah. I chose a different path and headed off on my own. I tapped the smartwatch on my wrist, and a blue holographic screen projected into the air. Please verify identity, the text read. I pressed my thumb against the screen. Verification successful. Candidate, Lin Yuan. School, Jiangxing Second High School. Exam number, 2037-214-7849. The display showed my current stats. In the top right corner, a live leaderboard flickered. First place, Zhou Mingyang, 7 points. Second place, Li Yuan, 5 points. 874th place, Lin Yuan, 0 points. The guys from First High are fast, I muttered. They were already racking up kills. I opened the map. It was a series of concentric circles. The outer rim was green, the middle was yellow, the core was red, and the very center was a deep, dark crimson. I was currently a tiny white dot on the green edge. I didn't waste time. I adjusted my grip on the spear and headed straight for the red zone. I hadn't been walking long when something blocked my path. It was a beast about the size of a leopard, covered in fur as black as ink. Its eyes were a pale, haunting orange. If it weren't for the jagged fangs and the dried blood coating its claws, it might have been beautiful. And Shadowcat. I recognized it instantly from my textbooks. They were common in the wasteland, but common didn't mean easy. They were fast, agile, and had a bite force of over 1,000 kilograms. Plenty of students had failed the exam because they underestimated these things. The shadow cat let out a bloodthirsty growl. The scent of my flesh must have been driving it crazy. It lunged, its paws blurring as it picked up speed. Normally, a rookie would panic during their first real encounter with a beast. But I felt strangely calm. The cat closed the distance in a heartbeat. When it was 3 meters away, it coiled its muscles and leaped. It aimed its claws, sharp as alloy steel, directly at my head. If that hit landed, my skull would pop like a ripe watermelon. It seemed to already be savoring the kill. A cruel, almost human-like excitement flashed across the shadow cat's gaunt face. It thought it had me. But a split second later, a black shadow flickered through the air. My spearhead drove straight through the beast's throat, pinning it mid-air. Fresh crimson blood erupted from its neck like a fountain. I watched the life fade from its orange eyes. A notification popped up in my mind. Asterisk killed 1 unranked shadow cat. Obtained 3 ability points. Asterisk. I looked down at the carcass. Why are these things called ferocious beasts? It's not just because they're violent. It's because they carry a terrifying aura. Meeting one is like staring into the eyes of a professional assassin. For most people, that pressure is enough to make their hearts fail or their legs freeze. Most students lose 70% of their combat power the moment they feel that killing intent. Some forget how to even hold their weapons. That's why wealthy families hire bodyguards to take their kids into the wild before the exam, to get them used to the fear. I didn't have that luxury. I'd spent nights wondering if I'd freeze up when the time came. But as I stood over the dead cat, I realized I felt nothing. No fear, no hesitation. My mind had stayed perfectly clear, calculating the cat's trajectory with cold precision before I lunged. Some people are just born immune to that pressure. It looked like I was one of the lucky ones. I jerked my right hand back. The obsidian spear slid out of the cat's neck with a wet thud, and the body slumped into the dirt, kicking up a cloud of dust. You've clearly never seen a spear before, I muttered. Shadow cats are known as rookie killers. Unlike the clumsy iron-haired boars, these things move at 17 meters per second. If you can't beat them, you can't outrun them. But this one made a fatal mistake. It jumped. Against a sword or a blade, a leaping attack might work because the ranges are similar. But my spear was over 2 meters long. 1 inch longer, 1 inch stronger. It died before it even got close enough to scratch me. I checked my system panel. Seeing those 3 new points made my chest tighten with excitement. If I kept killing, I could keep growing stronger right here in the middle of the exam. But 3 points was peanuts. I needed to get to the yellow and red zones. Beasts are ranked 1 through 9, just like fighters. Anything below rank 1 is unranked, basically the equivalent of an awakened student. I had originally planned to stay in the green zone to practice, but since the aura of fear didn't affect me, staying here was a waste of time. I gripped my spear and started sprinting toward the center of the ruins. I wasn't as fast as the wind element students, but I made up for it by killing everything in my path. Asterisk killed 1 iron-haired boar. 5 ability points. Asterisk. Asterisk killed 1 shadow cat. 3 ability points. Asterisk. Asterisk killed 1 one-horned lizard. 6 ability points. Asterisk. I didn't use my lightning. I wanted to polish my spear technique and gain real experience. Using S-Rank Purple Cloud Divine Thunder on these low-level mobs would just vaporize them instantly. Plus, rare abilities drain energy fast. My old E-Rank Spark could last 3 hours, but this S-Rank power might drain me in less than 1. The exam lasted 12 hours. I had to save my trump card for the high-level beasts in the core zone. With every kill, I felt myself changing. My movements were becoming more fluid. My reaction time was sharpening. The spear was starting to feel like an extension of my own arm. Is my technique breaking through? I wondered. I stopped in a narrow, crumbling alley. At my feet lay a one-horned lizard the size of a small car. Its skin was thick, brownish-black, and even in death, it looked terrifying. This was a beast most students avoided at all costs. It was covered in deep gashes, but the killing blow had been a brutal thrust through the eye, straight into the brain. I pulled the spear out. A mixture of red and white fluid followed the tip. Most people would have vomited at the sight, but I didn't blink. I just opened my status window. Name: Lin Yuan. Ability, Purple Cloud Divine Thunder, S-Rank. Physique, 141. Spirit, 160. Skills, Spear Technique, Intermediate, Flash Gale Break, Beginner. Ability points, 213. I grinned. My spear technique had officially reached intermediate level. 6 years of training by the original owner of this body only got him to beginner. I had surpassed that in just a few dozen fights. Real combat truly was the best teacher. The status window didn't lie. Real combat was the ultimate teacher. Reaching intermediate level with the spear made me feel like the weapon was finally part of my soul, but I wasn't satisfied. I wondered what would happen if I pushed it even further. 3 hours had passed since the exam started. I hadn't been hunting actively, but I'd still crossed paths with over 40 beasts. I'd cut through everything from low-level shadow cats to dangerous saber-toothed tigers and one-horned lizards. I hadn't been tracking my progress, but seeing those 213 ability points sitting there made my heart race. It was enough for a major upgrade. This was just the beginning. Once I hit the central zone and unleashed my Purple Cloud Divine Thunder, those points would stack up like a mountain. Still, the temptation was too much to resist. I focused on the plus sign next to my spear technique and mentally tapped it. A flood of information slammed into my brain. It wasn't like watching a movie or reading a book. It felt like decades of muscle memory were being carved into my nerves and bones. My mind burned with thousands of thrusts, parries, and strikes I'd never actually performed, yet I knew them all by heart. I gripped the obsidian spear and lunged. In a single second, the tip blurred, striking 4 times in a row. It looked like 4 streaks of black lightning cutting the air. I was breathless. The spear moved like a living dragon in my hands. When I finally stopped, the friction from the speed was so intense that the spearhead hissed, a faint cloud of steam rising from the metal. My physique and spirit were the foundation, but this advanced spear technique was the multiplier. My strike speed had doubled. I felt like I could dance around a first-order beast and tear it apart without breaking a sweat. I checked my status again. The upgrade cost 200 points, leaving me with a measly 13. It was worth it, though a part of me was already hungry to see what master level would look like. I pulled up the map. My white dot was hovering right at the edge of the green outer zone. The yellow central zone was just ahead. In 30 minutes, I'd be facing peak unranked beasts and even evolved tier monsters. That was where the real harvest would begin. I started moving through an old residential area. The 6-story buildings were crumbling, half-collapsed, and weathered by decades of neglect. Weeds choked the stone paths between the ruins. It was a ghost town, silent and oppressive. As I turned a corner to leave, I spotted a group of examinees at the end of the road. There were 5 of them, 3 girls and 2 guys. Leading them was a tall girl in a sleek, silver-white combat suit. I recognized her immediately. It was Lin Qingyuan, the class monitor who had tried to invite me to her team before the exam. She saw me too. Her eyes widened in surprise, and she hurried over, her long legs moving quickly in her form-fitting gear. The suit left little to the imagination, highlighting a fit, athletic curve that was hard to ignore. "Monitor," I said, offering a small smile. She was the first person from my class I'd run into out here. "Lin Yuan? I can't believe I ran into you here," she said, looking around the empty alley. "Are you alone?" Her teammates caught up, looking at me with total disbelief. Usually, E-rank students or solo fighters were weeded out within the first hour. It was noon now, 3 hours in. Not only was I still alive, but I had made it deep into the outskirts. "It's easier to move solo," I told her simply. Her eyes lit up, and she gave me a thumbs up. "Impressive. We only made it this far because of Xiao Xiao." A petite girl in the back nodded shyly. She was an Earth-rank support with a speed-boosting ability called Rapid March. That explained how they'd covered so much ground. "I've just been lucky," I lied, keeping it casual. The beasts I ran into weren't that tough. Looking at a beautiful girl was definitely better than staring at monster guts all day, but I didn't have time to linger. "Time's tight, Monitor," I said, nodding toward the central zone. "Let's catch up after the exam." "Go ahead," she said, smiling warmly. "Good luck. I hope you get a great score." She watched me walk away, clearly relieved. She'd always seen me as a bit of a tragic figure since I lost my parents, and I think she expected to find my body in a ditch. Seeing me alive, and well seemed to put her mind at ease. But behind her, one of her teammates let out a sharp gasp. "Captain, come look at this. This one-horned lizard, it just died." Lin Qingyuan turned. Her team was huddled around the massive carcass I'd just left behind. "The blood hasn't even clotted," one of the guys muttered, his voice shaking. "It died within the last few minutes. Look at these wounds. They're all deep punctures. It looks like a polearm, a spear." He looked up, his expression shifting from confusion to pure shock as he looked in the direction I'd just vanished. You don't think Lin Yuan killed this thing, do you?" One-horned lizards were notorious for being difficult to kill. Even Lin Qingyuan's full team of 5 only dared to face one because they had a speed booster. The idea that a single E-rank awakener could solo one was laughable. They didn't believe it for a second. "If Su Jingming really killed it, his score should show it," one of the boys said, pulling up the rankings on his smartwatch. He scrolled quickly, searching for the name. Suddenly, his finger stopped. His eyes went wide. Rank 46. Su Jingming. 256 points. Jiangxing Second High School. The boy froze. He rubbed his eyes so hard I thought he might pop them out of his head. He looked like he'd just seen a ghost. Holy crap. He broke into the top 50. "Tell me I'm not hallucinating," he screamed. "Rank 46? No way." The others muttered, crowding around the small holographic screen. When they saw the numbers, their expressions shifted from doubt to pure shock. Even Lin Qingyuan, usually so composed, just stood there with her mouth hanging open, looking completely dazed. A single question burned in all their minds. Since when were E-rank awakeners this terrifying? Outside the ruins, the atmosphere was just as tense. A massive leaderboard stood in the clearing, flanked by 10 giant screens showing the top 10 candidates, filmed by military drones. Below them, thousands of smaller feeds from fixed cameras flickered, too many to track at once. "Zhou Mingyang is at 412 points already," one of the observers noted. "He started his massacre in the central zone. His clear sky gale ability is perfect for travel. His speed wouldn't even look out of place in a provincial capital exam." The spectators were mostly officials from the Education Bureau and school principals. They were all focused on Lu Hang, the principal of Jiangxing First High School. His students were dominating. Out of the top 10, 9 were from his school. "Zhou Mingyang is our ace," said Zhang Wenshan, the director of the Education Bureau, nodding at the main screen. "With his performance, he might actually break into the top 100 of the entire Jiangnan province this year." Principal Lu sighed, looking proud but cautious. Jiangnan was a massive province with dozens of cities, and Jiangsheng was tucked away in the remote north. We were poor, resource-starved, and usually at the bottom of the rankings. We hadn't seen a student break into the provincial top 100 in nearly 8 years. Back then, it took an S-rank talent to do it. But looking at Zhou Mingyang, they finally saw hope again. "First high is doing excellent work," Zhang Wenshan said. "Third high is decent too, getting 1 student into the top 10. But second high, they're falling behind. Their best student is only at rank 18. Zhao Yao, the principal of second high, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Usually, his school beat third high, but today the tables had turned. He scanned the top 50 list, looking for his students. He saw the usual names from the elite classes: Li Ming, Yang Jian, Tang Qi. Then, his eyes snagged on a name he didn't recognize. "Who is this Su Jingming?" Zhao Yao muttered. "I've never heard of him." He figured it was just a student from a standard class who had been hiding their strength. It happened sometimes. He didn't think much of it, but further back in the seating area, my homeroom teacher, Chen Fan, was losing his mind. He knew exactly who I was. He knew I was an E-rank. To him, seeing me at rank 46 was impossible. Did he hide his strength? Chen Fan wondered, his head spinning. But an E-rank is an E-rank. It's not like it can suddenly turn into an S-rank. How is he getting these points? The exam was a live hunt. You couldn't fake the kills. Chen Fan desperately tried to find my feed among the thousands of tiny screens, but it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. He was dying of curiosity, but I was miles away, unaware of the chaos my name was causing. I had finally reached the central zone. The air here felt different. Thicker, smelling of old blood and aggression. The roars of beasts echoed between the crumbling buildings. I stepped over a rusted plastic basin, my combat boots crushing it into dust. This town used to have 100,000 people before the monsters broke through the lines. Now, it was just a graveyard. I pulled out a nutrition bar, took a bite, and tightened my grip on my spear. The real hunt was just beginning. The scale of the tragedy hit me as I moved deeper into the city. Back in the day, 50 or 60,000 people had died here in the jaws of monsters. The outskirts didn't show much, but the inner ruins told the real story. I walked past rusted cars abandoned in the middle of the road and dark, dried bloodstains that painted the cracked pavement. Every now and then, I'd spot a stray human bone that hadn't fully turned to dust yet. It was a grim reminder of how cruel this world could be. This was the city center, the place where the population had been densest and the slaughter most intense. Not a single building was intact. Everything was a hollow shell. The Great Xia country used these ruins for the martial arts exams for a reason. They wanted us to see the destruction. They wanted us to feel the stakes. Most citizens were protected so well they'd never see a beast in their entire lives. But for us, the awakened, we had to know the truth. We had to see the brutality early. A low growl snapped me out of my thoughts. I looked up. A beast lunged from the rubble. It looked like a tiger, but it was massive, with fur a mottled mix of yellow and green. The most terrifying part was its forearms. Long, bone blades grew out of them, gleaming with a cold, metallic luster. It had a whip-like tail that thrashed against the ground. A blade tiger. I narrowed my eyes. These were common, but their strength was easy to judge. If the bone blades were under 20 centimeters, they were unranked. If they were longer, you were looking at a ranked beast. This one had blades at least 22 centimeters long. It was a tier 1 beast. Its amber eyes locked onto mine, overflowing with bloodlust. It smelled much more dangerous than the shadow cats I'd faced earlier. Lucky me, I muttered. A tier 1 right out of the gate. I finished the last of my nutrition bar, feeling the energy settle in my stomach. I gave a small smirk and gripped my spear. It was time to see what my training was really worth. I didn't back away. Instead, I charged. My obsidian spear dragged against the concrete as I ran, sending a shower of sparks flying with a screeching metallic ring. The blade tiger was smart enough to be offended. It saw a weak human rushing it and let out a roar that shook the air. It charged back like a heavy tank. Most students would have frozen in fear at the sight of those fangs and blades, but I felt nothing but focus. My right arm surged with power. I swung the dragging spear upward in a massive arc, then lunged forward with a precise thrust. My physical stats were already at 140, higher than almost anyone here, and with my spear technique now at the advanced level, my speed was blinding. Hook! The spear buried itself deep into the tiger's belly before it could even react. I twisted the blade, carving a hole the size of a bowl. Blood sprayed, exposing the raw muscle and organs underneath. A normal animal would have dropped dead, but this was a tier 1 beast. It let out a pained howl, its eyes turning a deeper shade of red as it went into a frenzy. It lunged again, ignoring the massive hole in its gut. Tough life force, I noted. I didn't even use my lightning. I wanted to test my raw skill. I danced around the beast, my spear moving like a swimming dragon. Every time the tiger tried to close the gap, I poked another hole in it. That's the beauty of a spear. It's the ultimate cheat weapon. If you're fast enough, you can kill your enemy without them ever touching your clothes. In less than a minute, the beast that could have wiped out 99% of the candidates was a mangled corpse. It collapsed into the dust with a heavy thud. I stood over it, my combat suit spotless. Kill confirmed. Tier 1 blade tiger. Plus 10 evolution points. I grinned. That was double what I got from unranked beasts. I needed to move faster. I slung my spear behind my back and headed toward the sound of more roars. The exam zone was divided into the outskirts, the middle, the core, and the inner core. Most students stayed in the outskirts. Only the elites dared the middle. The core was reserved for the rocket-class geniuses from the top high schools. As for the inner core, where Tier 2 beasts lived, hardly anyone in the city was expected to go there. That was territory for the monsters from the capital. With my S-rank Purple Cloud Divine Thunder, I knew I belonged in the inner core. But I had to be smart. My energy wasn't infinite. I decided to farm the middle zone for a while to build up points, and moved to the core for the final 2 hours. I fell into a rhythm. Find a beast, kill it, take the points. Find another, kill it, take the points. I didn't need my S-rank powers for these. My spear and my body were enough. I also started noticing a pattern. Points weren't just about rank. They were about the beast's actual combat strength. A high-tier unranked horned lizard gave as many points as a low-tier tier 1 shadow cat because the lizard was harder to kill. It didn't matter to me. Harder to kill just meant I had to swing my spear a little harder. And I had plenty of strength to spare. The technicalities of the point system didn't really matter to me anymore. My strategy was simple. If it breathed, I killed it. I didn't stop for a single second. I was either buried in a fight or sprinting toward the next roar. As the pile of beast carcasses grew, my evolution points began to skyrocket. My official exam score was climbing even faster. I was focused on the hunt, completely unaware of the absolute chaos my name was causing in the outside world. The martial arts exam was a grueling 12-hour marathon. By 1 p.m., 4 hours had already passed. Most students were exhausted, hiding in shadows to choke down their first energy bars. Outside the combat zone, the atmosphere was a lot more relaxed. The school principals and teachers had just finished their lunch at the military canteen and were strolling back to the spectator stands. The power dynamics were obvious. First High School was dominating the top 10 as usual. They had the best funding and the best resources in Jiangxing, so nobody was surprised. The teachers from my school, Second High, were huddled together discussing their own standings. They were having a decent year with 8 students in the top 50, but Third High had managed to snag a spot in the top 10, which made our faculty look a bit weak in comparison. Suddenly, a name on the leaderboard stopped them in their tracks. "Hey, Sun Yang." One teacher called out to the head of the elite rocket class. "What's the deal with this Lin Yuan? I've never heard of a kid like that in the top ranks before." Sun Yang looked genuinely confused. "He's not in the rocket class. I was actually about to ask which one of you he belonged to." The group went quiet. After the awakening ceremony, every school reshuffled their students. The geniuses went to the rocket class, and everyone else went to the parallel classes. It was unheard of for a regular student to break into the top tiers of the exam. At the back of the group, my homeroom teacher, Chun Fan, was walking in silence. He was being shadowed by Li Jun, the teacher from Class 4. These two had been rivals for years, and Li Jun never missed a chance to rub a victory in. "My class is doing pretty well," Li Jun bragged, leaning in close to Chin Fan. "My best student just cracked the top 100. I guess my year-end bonus is going to be a lot bigger than yours this time." In a small city like ours, a 10,000 yuan bonus was a massive deal. Li Jun was practically vibrating with smug energy, assuming Chin Fan was dying of jealousy. Chin Fan just glanced at him, his face a mask of indifference. "Is that so? Well, you might be disappointed then. My class is doing all right, too. I've got someone in the top 50. Li Jun stopped walking. He let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "Top 50? Stop joking, old Chun. Those spots are reserved for the rocket class. There's no way one of your kids is up there." Then the realization hit him like a freight train. His eyes widened as he stared at the board. "Wait, you're telling me Lin Yuan is in your class?" Chin Fan gave a slow, casual nod. He had been waiting for this moment. "If he's yours, why didn't you say anything when they were asking?" Li Jun stammered, his face turning a shade of red. "Oh, did they ask?" Chin Fan played it perfectly. "I must have missed it." Li Jun looked like he wanted to punch the smug look right off Chin Fan's face. He knew he'd been played. But Chin Fan wasn't done yet. He sighed softly, looking at the screen. "Honestly, top 50 is okay, I guess. But the best kid in the rocket class is already at rank 18. Lin Yuan still has a lot of work to do." Li Jun felt like he was going to vomit blood. To a regular teacher, a top 50 student was a dream. The bonus alone was over 20,000 yuan. Seeing Chun Fan act like it was just okay was driving him insane. The other teachers quickly crowded around, offering their congratulations. Even Sun Yang, the elite class lead, gave Chun Fan a respectful nod. Taking a student from a regular class and putting them in the top 50 was a massive achievement. As they took their seats in the stands, Chun Fan ignored the chatter. He leaned forward, his eyes locked onto the massive virtual screen hovering in the air. He started scrolling, his heart racing, searching for my name to see exactly where I stood. My teacher, Chun Fan, scanned the leaderboard until his eyes locked onto my name. Rank 32, Lin Yuan, 328 points. Jiangxing number 2 high school. Chun Fan froze. He rubbed his eyes, wondering if he'd hallucinated. I had been at rank 46 just before he went to lunch. How did I jump 14 spots in the time it took to eat a meal? As he stared, the screen flickered. The list refreshed. My name didn't just move, it leaped. Rank 25, Lin Yuan, 372 points. Jiangxing number 2 high school. Chun Fan's jaw dropped. His heart hammered against his ribs. This shouldn't have been possible. There were over 1,400 candidates in this exam, and while rankings shifted constantly at the bottom, the top 50 was a different world. At that level, the power gap between students was usually massive. Moving up a single spot was a struggle. Jumping 7 ranks in a heartbeat was unheard of. He wasn't the only one who noticed. The other teachers from my school started buzzing, their voices rising in a mix of shock and disbelief. Wait, look at Lin Yuan. He's at 25 now. Is that real? He's from a regular class, right? This is insane. Out of the 9 students from our school who had cracked the top 50, I was now the 3rd highest, trailing only the stars of the elite rocket class. My score had surged by 44 points in seconds. At the front of the stands, Principal Zhao Yao narrowed his eyes. As a C-rank mental type awakener, his mind worked like a computer. He knew the math. To gain 44 points in the 4-second window between system updates, I had to have slaughtered 5 peak-tier beasts or 3 first-rank monsters. Either way, it meant one thing. I was a monster. When did we get a student this fierce? Zhao Yao muttered, feeling completely out of the loop. Beside him, the director of the Education Bureau, Zhang Wenshan, nodded in approval. Principal Zhao, it seems your school was hiding a dark horse. This Lin Yuan clearly wasn't trying earlier. Now that he's started, he's tearing through the rankings. He has the strength of a top 10 contender, added Lu Hang, the principal of number 1 high school. What's his ability? I haven't heard his name before. Zhao Yao looked embarrassed. To be honest, he just exploded today. I need to talk to his teacher. He turned and waved Chun Fan over. Teacher Chun, come here. Under the envious glares of his colleagues, Chun Fan walked down to the front row. Sitting next to the principal and the director felt like sitting with gods. He was stiff, his hands trembling slightly. Principal, director, Chun Fan said, his voice tight. From what I know, Lin Yuan only awakened an E-rank ability. Weak electricity. Zhao Yao frowned, his brow furrowing. Are you sure? E-rank. I'm certain, Chun Fan replied with a bitter smile. I actually tried to talk him out of taking the combat exam. I thought it was too dangerous for him. Director Zhang leaned back, looking thoughtful. Maybe the initial testing was wrong. Or maybe he has some other hidden talent. It's a shame he's not in the top 10 yet. We can't see his live feed. The broadcast system only showed the top 10 students. Finding one person among thousands of cameras was like looking for a needle in the ocean. We wait, Zhang said, his eyes fixed on the screen. With that momentum, he'll be in the top 10 soon enough. Zhao Yao nodded and told Chun Fan to stay seated with them. It was a massive honor for a regular teacher. The minutes ticked by. Rank 21, rank 16, rank 12. Then, less than an hour later, the screen flashed. Rank 9, Lin Yuan. He did it. Chun Fan shouted, jumping to his feet. He couldn't help himself. A student from his average class was officially one of the 10 strongest kids in the city. The air in the stadium changed. Everyone looked up as the 9th place virtual projection flickered to life. The screen filled with a tall, lean figure dressed in a black combat suit. It was me. My face was set, my eyes cold and focused. I held my 2-meter-long obsidian spear, the tip dripping with fresh, crimson blood. Several dead beasts lay mangled at my feet. A few yards away, a massive predator hovered, whimpering, too terrified to close the distance. The image was striking: black armor, a blood-stained spear, and a mountain of corpses. I looked less like a student and more like a god of war. Suddenly, I moved. My spear lashed out like a striking dragon. In a single blur of motion, the screen turned white. The remaining beast didn't even have time to react. I drove my spear straight through its throat, pinning it to the ground instantly. In the stadium, A collective gasp rippled through the crowd of teachers. That strike was fast. It was impossibly fast. It looked less like a physical movement and more like a jagged bolt of lightning. My speed was comparable to an awakened with high-level wind abilities, yet everyone knew my file listed me as a lightning user. The teachers were stunned by the fast, accurate, and ruthless display on the screen. My homeroom teacher, Chen Fan, stared with his mouth hanging open. He had overseen my combat classes for years and always thought my skills were just mediocre. He felt a mix of shock and betrayal. I had hidden this level of spear mastery from him for so long, clearly waiting for the college entrance exam to shock the world. He nodded to himself, realizing his earlier warnings about me skipping the exam were completely unnecessary. With a body that's strong and techniques that sharp, even an E-rank could survive. Zhao Yao, the principal of Second High, let out a long breath and shook her head. "It's a pity," she whispered. Beside her, Zhang Wenshan, the director of the Education Bureau, shared her disappointment. They saw a genius of technique, but in this world, raw skill only took you so far. As an awakened grows, their physical techniques eventually hit a ceiling. Higher-level combat was dominated by the power of one's ability. If I had even a C-rank ability to match this spear technique, I would be the undisputed #1 in Jiang City. But to them, I was just a tragic waste of talent trapped in an E-rank shell. Chen Fan didn't care about their grand theories. He was just happy. As long as I stayed in the top 10 until the end of the exam, I was guaranteed a spot in a prestigious university. To him, that was already a miracle compared to the death sentence he expected me to face. Back in the ruins of the town, I didn't know or care what the officials thought. *kill confirmed, Tier 1 Shadow Cat. Energy points +9. The notification rang in my head, and I felt a surge of satisfaction. The central area of the town was a gold mine. I had been in here for barely an hour and had already slaughtered over 20 Tier 1 beasts and a dozen elite unranked ones. My system panel showed a total of 312 energy points. I heard the high-pitched hum of rotors above me. A tracking drone was hovering 50 meters up, its camera locked onto my position. I checked my smartwatch. Rank 9, Lin Yuan, 607 points. Jiang City Second High School. I smiled. The drone meant the eyes of the city were on me. Once I started using my real power, the purple cloud divine thunder would be exposed. There was no way to hide an S-rank phenomenon as a weak E-rank spark, and I didn't plan to. This exam was about proving potential and strength. Only a fool would handicap themselves and lose points just to keep a secret. I pulled up my system interface. Name, Lin Yuan. Level, Awakened. Ability, Purple Cloud Divine Thunder. S. Constitution, 141, Blood/Chi. Spirit, 160 Hz. Skills, Advanced Spear Mastery, Flash Gale Break. Beginner. Energy points, 312. I frowned. I had over 300 points, but there was no plus sign next to my level. I realized there were only two possibilities. Either the jump from awakened to professional required a massive amount of points, or there was a specific condition I hadn't met. Then it hit me. I needed an ability cultivation technique to bridge the gap. Those manuals cost millions of dollars, money I didn't have. I had hoped the system would let me bypass the requirement, but it seemed I'd have to wait until I got into a university to officially level up. Fine, I muttered. If I can't level up, I'll just get stronger. I dumped my points into my base stats. 200 points went into Constitution, and 112 went into Spirit. A violent surge of power erupted through my veins. My mind cleared instantly, and the fatigue from the morning's battles vanished. I felt incredible. I spun my obsidian spear, the weapon feeling lighter and more responsive than ever. With this physique and my advanced spear skills, I didn't even need my lightning to take down mid-tier beasts. I shook the blood off my blade with a sharp flick. The central area was too easy now. I looked toward the map's core zone, where the strongest, most dangerous monsters gathered. I took off in a sprint, my speed now surpassing even the top-tier wind users. Behind me, the drone struggled to keep pace as I charged toward the heart of the ruins. Meanwhile, in another part of the central district, a Tier 1 shadow cat collapsed, its throat slit. Tang Chi emerged from the shadows, her body draped in a purple-black feline energy shroud, her dagger dripping with blood. She was hunting, unaware that the cousin she had looked down on was already miles ahead of her. Tang-Chi didn't realize I was watching, or rather, she didn't realize I was already far beyond her. She moved with a fluid, predatory grace. Her B-rank ability, Shadow Cat, was active, wrapping her body in a shroud of purple-black energy. It boosted her speed, reflexes, and raw power significantly. It was the only reason she, a mere awakened, could take down Tier 1 beasts. She had practiced cultivation techniques, and while she wasn't a true professional yet, her foundation was solid. Still, a Tier 1 low-level beast was her absolute limit. That was why she stuck to the Central District, terrified of the Tier 1 mid-level monsters lurking in the core zone. To save her energy, she deactivated her ability as soon as the kill was confirmed. The feline shroud vanished, and her pupils returned to their normal shape. She tapped her smartwatch to check the rankings. Her brow furrowed. 12th place. Tang-Chi, 567 points. Jiangqing first high. She had dropped a spot. Annoyed, she scrolled up to see who had overtaken her. When she hit the 9th spot, she froze. 9th place. Lin Yuan, 607 points. Second hot. She stood there, stunned for a long time. Her mind flashed back to the tall, straight silhouette of a boy carrying a long spear. She remembered the destruction she'd seen at the Thunder Dojo the day before. So it really was you, she whispered. She wondered if it was just someone with the same name, but both were from second high. The odds of that were 0. Between the dojo incident and this ranking, she was certain. But how? How could an E-rank loser do this? A flicker of curiosity crossed her face. It seemed her honest cousin had been hiding a very big secret. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the ruins, my friend Lu Jie was having a meltdown. He had activated his growth ability, standing twice his normal size, staring at the virtual projection in shock. Holy crap, Lin Yuan is this cracked, he yelled, slapping his forehead. If I knew he was a god, I would have called him daddy just to carry me. Who cares about dignity when you can get into a top university? In another part of the zone, Lin Qingyuan's team was equally stunned. They had been tracking my progress since I hit rank 46. Seeing me break into the top 10 left them speechless. How is he doing this? One of them asked. Lin Qingyuan looked at the board with a complicated expression. He's in a different league now. We can't worry about him. Let's just focus on breaking into the top 300. When I was in the 40s, nobody cared. But the top 10? Now, every single student in the exam had their eyes on my name. I didn't know, and I didn't care. I was too busy sprinting toward the heart of the ruins. With my boosted constitution, I was a blur. It took me only 30 minutes to reach the core zone. This used to be the most prosperous part of town, filled with high-rises and luxury shops now crumbling under layers of moss and dust. More importantly, there were no more unranked monsters here. Everything was Tier 1 low to mid-level. Only the top 5 students in the city usually dared to set foot here. Because I hadn't stopped to hunt on the way, my rank had slipped back down to 10th. I wasn't worried. I just need one big pack, I muttered, my eyes narrowing. Then I'm taking first place for good. I listened. The air was thick with the sounds of the wild. I headed southeast, toward the loudest, most aggressive roars. Most students moved through these ruins like mice, terrified of drawing attention. I moved like a leopard. The 50-kilogram obsidian spear on my back felt like it weighed nothing at all. The wind whistled past my ears. I ignored the stray monsters I saw in the alleys. They weren't worth my time. Finally, I reached a rusted, mangled bus blocking the road. I didn't slow down. At the last second, I planted my foot and leaped 6 meters into the air. I landed on the roof of the bus with a heavy thud. Below me was a fitness plaza. It was a graveyard of broken exercise equipment and rotting carcasses. The smell was a foul mix of copper blood and animal musk. I counted them. 1, 2, 3, 10 of them. Blade tiger cats. They were pack hunters, the kind of nightmare that made regular examinees turn and run the other way. But as I looked down, I didn't feel fear. I felt a surge of heat in my chest. This was exactly what I wanted. In the center of the plaza, a massive blade tiger king was lazily feasting on a dead rhino. It was huge, with forelimbs as thick as pillars and bone blades that looked like they could slice through tanks. A Tier 1 mid-level beast. I let out a slow breath, my lips curling into a smirk. That king was worth a lot of points. My presence didn't go unnoticed. 9 blade tigers stood up, their eyes glowing with predatory hunger as they began to prowl toward the bus. They moved slowly, confidently, their massive bodies creating a suffocating pressure as they closed in. The king stayed where he was, watching me with bored, murderous eyes. I gripped my spear. It was time to show them why I was here. Beast packs are always a nightmare to deal with. These 9 blade tiger cats were no exception. Even higher-tier monsters usually thought twice before picking a fight with a group like this. But as they prowled toward me, I didn't feel a flicker of fear. I leaped from the roof of the bus. My boots hit the cracked pavement with a heavy thud. One of the tigers let out a low growl. It was an eerie, intelligent sound. Instead of rushing me blindly, the pack fanned out with military precision, flanking me from different directions. I had to give it to them. Having a king meant they actually understood basic tactics. I shifted my grip, my fingers locking around the cold metal of my obsidian spear. The distance between the bus and the center of the plaza was barely 30 meters. For a Tier 1 beast, that was nothing. In a heartbeat, they were on me. 5 of them launched themselves into the air at once. They didn't just attack, they coordinated their jump to block every possible path forward. Their massive bodies created a wall of fur and claws. With the bus at my back, I was trapped. I had nowhere to run. I didn't need to run. I planted my feet, my eyes locking onto the center of the mass. I swung the 2-meter obsidian spear in a massive horizontal arc, spinning it like a high-speed propeller. The heavy weapon became a black blur, whistling through the air with terrifying momentum. The tigers realized their mistake mid-air, but it was too late. They slammed right into the rotating windmill of steel. The sound was sickening, the wet thud of metal meeting flesh and the cracking of bone. The spearhead acted like a meat grinder. It tore through their skulls and sent them crashing to the ground in a heap of broken limbs. I glanced down. They were still breathing, their heads mangled but their hearts still beating. I shook my head. My raw physical strength alone wasn't enough to kill them instantly without using a specific skill. If I had infused my lightning into that swing, they would have been ash. I guess I'll just have to finish this the old-fashioned way, I muttered. The remaining 4 tigers tried to intercept me, but I was too fast. I danced through their reach, my footwork leaving them biting at shadows. My spear moved like a reaper's scythe, systematically silencing the 5 wounded beasts. That was when the king finally moved. The Tier 1 mid-level blade tiger king stood up, his bored expression replaced by a low, guttural snarl. He stepped over the corpses of his pack, his eyes fixed on me. Good, I said, wrenching my spear out of a carcass. I can take you all out at once. I stood alone against the 5 remaining monsters. My vision was clear, my heart steady. I didn't feel like a student taking an exam. I felt like a predator. The king roared, and the entire plaza seemed to tremble. On his command, the remaining 4 tigers charged alongside him. I met them head-on. These beasts were smart. They had probably hunted together for years, taking down creatures much stronger than themselves. Against a squad of elite soldiers, they would have caused a massacre. But I wasn't a squad. I was a ghost. I moved like a black phantom, slipping through the narrow gaps between their claws. They couldn't touch me. Every time I thrust my spear, it found a vital organ. One by one, they fell. In less than 2 minutes, the plaza went silent. The king lay at my feet, his life fading into the dirt. Is that it? I sighed, looking at the massive beast. You didn't even make me use my lightning. I checked my system interface. My eyes widened. That one encounter had netted me 106 energy points. A total windfall. If I kept this pace up until the end of the exam, I'd be able to upgrade my powers beyond recognition. I wiped the blood off my spear, slung it across my back, and headed for the next zone. I didn't have time to waste. While I was hunting in the ruins, the rest of Jiang City was watching. Every high school had organized a live screening of the exam for the younger students. At Jiang City Second High, my alma mater, the atmosphere was electric. Usually, the top 10 spots were reserved for the elite, first high students. But this year, my name, Lin Yuan, was sitting at rank 9. When the screen showed me impaling a shadow cat in one shot, the students went wild. Holy crap, That was amazing, one kid shouted. I've never heard of Senior Lin Yuan before, but he's my new idol. He's so strong. A girl whispered, eyes glued to the screen. And look at that spear. But as the minutes ticked by, the excitement started to fade. For the next half hour, I was mostly traveling, avoiding unnecessary fights to reach the high-value targets. My rank started to slip. I dropped to 10th, then lower. The mood in the bleachers turned sour. Maybe he's just a one-hit wonder, a student muttered. Second high just can't compete with the elites. Yeah, he's clearly running out of steam, another added. I'm switching to the stream for Zhou Mingyang. At least the wind sword is actually doing something. Expectation is a dangerous thing. Because I wasn't constantly killing, people assumed I was failing. Many students turned away, losing interest in my feed. Then, a shout rang out across the plaza. Wait, look, Senior Lin found a pack. The students scrambled to look back at the screen. They saw me standing on top of that rusted bus, surrounded by a pack of massive blade tigers. Oh no, someone whispered. He's dead. The students back at Jiang City Second High were panicking. They watched the screen with white knuckles, certain they were about to witness a tragedy. He's surrounded, someone choked out. The blade tigers have him trapped. Why isn't he running? The blade tigers were closing in, their metallic claws scraping against the asphalt. To the crowd, I looked like a man who had frozen in fear. They waited for me to activate my emergency safety orb, the only thing that would save my life at the cost of my disqualification. Even the students who had been complaining about me earlier were now holding their breath, praying I'd make it out. Some of the girls even covered their eyes, unable to watch the moment I'd be torn apart. But the screams they expected never came. Instead, I moved. My obsidian spear whistled through the air, moving with a raw, primal power that defied logic. I didn't just defend, I exploded. With a single, sweeping strike, I sent 5 massive blade tigers flying through the air like they were made of straw. Holy crap, a guy in the stands yelled, jumping to his feet. Did you see that? How is he that strong? The crowd went wild. They had never seen a spear used with such sheer, brutal force. Normally, a fighter would be shredded trying to take on a pack like that, but I was tossing them aside like toys. They started whispering that I must have a physical enhancement ability. There was no other explanation for that kind of power. I didn't give the beasts a chance to recover. I became a black blur, weaving through the pack with the flash gale break. My spear was a phantom, striking faster than the eye could follow. Every time I thrust or swung, blood sprayed across the dark metal of my weapon until the entire spear turned a brilliant, visceral crimson. It was violent. It was aggressive, and the students loved it. This is way better than watching Zhou Mingyang's wind sword, someone shouted over the cheers. That fancy swordplay looks like dancing. This is a real fight. There was no pity for the monsters. These beasts were the enemies of humanity, and watching me slaughter them single-handedly was pure catharsis. The teenagers in the plaza were flushed red with excitement, their hearts racing as they watched me dominate the battlefield with a terrifyingly beautiful sense of destruction. I stood over the corpse of the Blade Tiger King, breathing steadily as the notifications rolled in. Back at the school, my rank on the leaderboard suddenly flickered and jumped. Rank 6, Lin Yuan, 796 points. The plaza went dead silent for a second before erupting in confusion. Wait, what? He was just at 634 points. How did he gain 160 points in one fight? Look at the map, a student screamed, pointing at the screen. He's not in the middle zone anymore. He's in the red core area. The realization hit them like a physical blow. Those weren't just standard monsters. Those were Tier 1 beasts, and I had been carving through them like they were nothing. They finally understood why I had been wandering for the last half hour. I wasn't lost or scared. I was sprinting toward the most dangerous part of the map because the weak monsters weren't worth my time. Even the legendary Zhou Mingyang would have to use hit-and-run tactics against a pack like that. But I had just walked into the center of the storm and wiped it out. Outside the military zone, the VIP stands were just as chaotic. The teachers and principals from every school were staring at my feed with their jaws dropped. My homeroom teacher, Chun Fan, was glowing, his face bright red with pride. He knew his career was about to skyrocket because of me. Look at those strikes, the director of the Education Bureau, Zhang Wenshan, muttered. He was leaning so far forward, He almost fell off his chair. That's not just strength. That's high-level spear technique. He's only 18. How can he have mastered a weapon to that degree already? He slapped his thigh and sighed, a mix of admiration and regret in his eyes. It's such a waste. If he had a better rank for his talent, he'd be breaking records for the entire province. With a spear like that, he could have been top 50 in Jiangnan. But an E-rank lightning talent, he'll hit a ceiling eventually. The other teachers nodded, though they were still stunned. Mastering a weapon to a high-level grade usually took decades of blood and sweat. To see it in a high schooler was unheard of. The principal of First High, Lu Hang, looked like he'd just swallowed a lemon. His school always produced the top ranker. Seeing a student from Second High outperform his star pupil was a bitter pill to swallow. Still, he forced a tight smile and turned to my principal. "Congratulations, Principal Zhao," he said stiffly. "It looks like the top spot in Jiang City might actually belong to Second High this year." My principal tried to play it cool, but the grin on his face was unmistakable. "The exam isn't over yet, Lu. Anything can happen." But we all knew the truth. I wasn't just competing anymore. I was taking over. It wasn't that my principal, Zhao Yao, didn't have any competitive feelings toward First High. It was just that for years, First High had been so dominant that Second High never even had a chance to shine. But now, the moment we were finally going to suppress them was arriving, and Zhao Yao was playing it cool. He acted humble, nodding as if he were just happy for the city. "Regardless of how things go, Su Jingming's strength is undeniable," Zhao Yao said softly. "Having two students from Jiang City break into the top 100 of the entire province is a win for everyone." Zhang Wenshan, the education director, finally managed to calm his excitement and nodded at my principal. "Second High has done a magnificent job this year, Zhao. You've raised a monster in Su Jingming. Once the exams are over, I'm going to propose a formal commendation for your school to the city council." Zhao Yao's face lit up. For an awakened who chose to be a principal, personal strength wasn't the goal anymore. It was all about the career path. A city-level commendation meant more resources for the school and a direct ticket for him to climb into the education bureau. "Su Jingming," Zhao Yao whispered to himself, feeling a surge of gratitude. "You've really given me the surprise of a lifetime." Just as Zhang Wenshan predicted, my score started rising like a rocket. In less than an hour, I bypassed Zhou Mingyang and claimed the #1 spot. By then, it was 3 in the afternoon. I had exactly 6 hours left before the combat exam ended. I was deep in the core area of the ruins, standing inside a dilapidated residential complex. Before me, 2 packs of beasts were locked in a bloody stalemate, treating each other like lunch. On one side were the one-horned lizards, on the other, the blade-wall tigers. If the numbers were even, the lizards would have crushed them, but there were 8 tigers and only 4 lizards. They were tearing into each other, leaving jagged, bloody wounds, but neither side had fallen yet. Monsters are brutal. Once they start a fight, they don't stop until someone is dead. Suddenly, one of the blade-wall tigers paused. It sniffed the air, lowered its body, and let out a threatening growl toward the entrance of the complex. It was like a chain reaction. Every beast stopped fighting and turned toward the gate, their eyes gleaming with hunger and malice. I walked in slowly. I was wearing my black combat suit and boots, my spear resting casually across my shoulders. I felt like a lone wolf entering a den. 12 beasts, I muttered, a small smile playing on my lips. Perfect. This was the largest group I'd found all hour. I slapped the butt of my spear, sending the obsidian shaft spinning into my grip. I was ready to dive in when I felt a prickle at the back of my neck. I stopped and looked toward a crumbling building to my right. "Come out," I said. "I know you're there." "Impressive," a voice replied. "No wonder you're in first place. Your senses are sharp." A young man with a long sword strapped to his back stepped out from the shadows. It was Zhou Mingyang, the clear wind sword from First High. He looked a lot messier than he did at the start of the day. His hair was a disaster, and his combat suit was stained with dark red blood, some of it his, some of it not. I was a bit surprised. "How did you know it was me?" Zhou Mingyang laughed. "There are only a handful of people capable of reaching the core area. We're all old acquaintances. When a total stranger shows up and takes the top spot, it's not hard to guess who you are." I nodded. In this exam, students weren't allowed to attack each other, Doing so meant instant disqualification. Plus, we both had drones hovering over our heads. I didn't have to worry about a backstab. I turned back toward the beasts. Wait. Zhou Mingyang stepped forward, blocking me. Are you planning to take them all on by yourself? My eyes narrowed. Why? You trying to steal my points? To me, those beasts weren't just a score. They were potential upgrade points for my S-rank talent. I wasn't sharing. When I looked at him, Zhou Mingyang flinched. He looked like he'd just been stared down by an apex predator. No, he said quickly, his skin crawling from my gaze. There are 2 mid-tier rank 1 beasts in there. You can't handle that alone. If we team up, we might have a chance. I was waiting for them to tire each other out before moving in. I don't need help, I said, my tone softening slightly since he wasn't trying to rob me. I patted his shoulder and walked past him. I can handle it. Hey, Zhou Mingyang tried to call me back, but I was already moving. He sighed, gripping his sword. Fine, you're the boss. Let's see what you've actually got. He stood back to watch, ready to jump in the second I got overwhelmed. But his jaw hit the floor within seconds. I moved through the pack like I was playing a video game on easy mode. My spear was a blur of black shadows. Every thrust, every sweep, every strike ended a life. In less than 3 minutes, 8 of the 12 beasts were dead. Zhou Mingyang was frozen. 2 hours ago, he didn't even know I existed. Then I shot up into the top 10, and 10 minutes ago, I knocked him off his throne. He had spent the last hour imagining what kind of terrifying A-rank talent I must have. But I wasn't even using flashy powers. I was just using a spear. He watched me dismantle the monsters with a level of efficiency he couldn't even dream of. Does he have some kind of hidden physical reinforcement talent? He whispered to himself, his throat dry. Before he could finish the thought, I was already done. The final Blade Wall Tiger King collapsed into the dust at my feet. A string of notifications echoed in my mind. Kill confirmed. Rank 1 low tier, 1-horned rhino. Ability points plus 12. Kill confirmed. Rank 1 low tier Blade Wall Tiger. Ability points plus 10. Kill confirmed. Rank 1 mid-tier Blade Wall Tiger. Ability points plus 15. I let out a slow breath, savoring the feeling. It was addictive. The rush of power, the steady climb of my stats. It was a sensation I couldn't get enough of. But I knew this wouldn't last forever. Once the martial arts exam ended, opportunities like this would vanish. I had to make every second count. I snapped back to reality and gave Zhou Mingyang a quick nod before turning to leave. I didn't want to waste time chatting while there were still points roaming the ruins. I was already 7 or 8 meters away by the time Zhou Mingyang found his voice. Lin Yuan, he shouted after me. Is your talent a physical reinforcement type? No. I called back over my shoulder, my figure already vanishing into the shadows of the crumbling buildings. It's lightning. Lightning. I could hear the confusion in his voice even from a distance. I knew what he was thinking. I hadn't used a single spark back there. He probably thought I was just brushing him off with a lie. To him, I was probably just some arrogant jerk who didn't want to share his secrets. Honestly, I didn't care what he thought. My eyes were on the map. I had seen the way he looked at the tiger pack earlier. He was worried I'd steal his kills. In a place like this, monsters were resources. And right now, I wanted all of them. Zhou Mingyang stood there for a while, grumbling to himself. He knew I was stronger, but his pride was stinging. He eventually shook it off and headed deeper into the core zone. He couldn't beat me for first place, but he was determined to hold on to second. For the first 2 hours, he did all right. He found a few stray mid-tier beasts and some small packs. But by the 3rd hour, the streets felt empty. By the 4th hour, he was wandering in circles, unable to find a single living thing. What is going on? He hissed, frustrated. Where did they all go? He kicked a fist-sized rock in anger. As an awakened fighter, his strength was massive. The stone tore through the air like a bullet, slamming into a rusted billboard with a deafening boom. Usually, he'd never be this loud. It was like ringing a dinner bell for every monster in the area. But now, he was actually hoping something would show up. Nothing moved. Instead of a monster, 3 students emerged from the shadows, drawn by the noise. It was 2 guys and a girl, all from the first high school elite class. I recognized them. They were the ones holding the other top spots in the rankings. Mingyang? What are you doing out in the open? One of the guys asked. Ask Lin Yuan. The guy with the shaved head said, shrugging his shoulders with a look of pure defeat. He's hunted the core zone clean. There's nothing left to kill. That's why we're all grouped up. We literally can't find work. The girl, who looked tiny but carried a massive broadsword, nodded sadly. We've been wandering for 30 minutes. We heard your rock hit the sign and thought it was a monster. We ran over here so fast, only to find you. Zhou Mingyang's eyes widened. Hunted it clean? That's impossible. They released hundreds of beasts into the core zone. No one can kill that many in a few hours. You haven't checked the rankings lately, have you? The bald student tapped his smartwatch, projecting a holographic screen into the air. First place, Lin Yuan, 3,435 points, Jiangcheng second high. Second place, Zhou Mingyang, 1,103 points, Jiangcheng first high. Third place, number 5, 945 points, Jiangcheng first high. 3,400? Zhou Mingyang nearly choked. His composed, elegant persona shattered instantly. Now you get it, the bald guy said, closing the projection with a bitter laugh. A low-tier kill is worth about 15 points. A mid-tier is maybe 22. Even if you subtract the points he got from the outer zones, he's personally slaughtered nearly 200 beasts right here in the core. Between him and the rest of us picking up the scraps, the map is empty. Zhou Mingyang stood frozen. It finally clicked why I had been so dismissive earlier. I wasn't being a jerk. I was being efficient. I wasn't worried about him helping me. I was worried he'd take a single point of my experience. While the students inside the zone were reeling in shock, the world outside was exploding. In the observation hall, the principals and officials were losing their minds. A score of 3,435 wasn't just high. It was legendary. It guaranteed me a spot in the top 10 of the entire Jiangnan province. I can't believe it, Zhao Yao, the principal of my school, stammered. He looked like he was about to have a heart attack from pure joy. He did all that with just a spear? Top 10 in the province. The top universities in the country are going to be clawing at each other to get him. Zhang Wanshan, the director of the Education Bureau, couldn't stop grinning. At this point, my E-rank status didn't matter. Results like these spoke louder than any test. The kid is a monster, Zhang whispered, looking at the empty heat maps of the core zone. He basically cleared the entire exam map by himself. We're looking at a future war machine. The numbers didn't lie. Between Zhou Mingyang's team and me, I had personally wiped out nearly half of the beasts in the entire core zone. What was even scarier was the timeline. I had done it all in less than 4 hours. Back in the observation hall, my homeroom teacher, Chun Fan, shared a bit of my history with the officials. He told them how my parents had both died in a beast tide when I was a child. He suspected that was why I fought with such relentless hatred. I see, Director Zhang Wanshan said, nodding slowly. His expression turned cold. One day, we will wipe every last one of those monsters off the face of the earth. It'll happen, Principal Zhao Yao added, his voice tight. I'm sure of it. Meanwhile, back inside the exam zone, Zhou Mingyang's teammates were surrounding him, desperate for info. Wait, you actually ran into Su Jingming, one of them asked. What's his ability? Tell us everything. I'm not sure about his specific element, Zhou Mingyang admitted, shaking his head. But his physical stats are insane. I'd guess his vitality is at least 180 points. 180? A bald student gasped. No wonder he's a freak. The average person only has 100 points of vitality. Even these guys, who were rank 1 awakened, only sat around 130. To them, 180 was a distant, impossible dream. He probably has a physical enhancement ability, a long-haired boy muttered, sounding a bit salty. If he's buffing his body with energy, those numbers make sense. No, Zhou Mingyang corrected him. He's still just a candidate. He hasn't officially broken through to rank 1 yet. A petite girl carrying a massive claymore let out a high-pitched yelp. You're telling me we're rank 1 awakened and we're getting outclassed by a guy who hasn't even promoted yet? The group went silent. The realization stung. Meng Di, Zhou Mingyang said eventually, looking at the girl. As always, you have a knack for pointing out the most depressing part of the situation. Meng Di was the only girl in the group, a B-rank strength enhancer currently ranked 4th overall. She stuck out her tongue playfully, which looked ridiculous considering the giant sword she was leaning on. I'm just shocked, okay? She chirped. The guy is a monster, the bald student sighed. But what now? We have 90 minutes left, and the core zone is a graveyard. Do we go back to the middle zone? That's a waste of time, Zhou Mingyang said after a moment. It takes 30 minutes just to get there, and the points for low-level beasts aren't worth the trek. I say we head for the dead zone. The dead zone, the absolute center of the map. The air in the group got heavy. The dead zone was home to high-tier rank 1 beasts, and rumor had it, a rank 2 king. For a single student, it was a suicide mission. If we go together, we might have a shot, the bald kid said, nodding. This exam decides our entire future. I'm not leaving points on the table. I'm in, Mengdi grinned. The long-haired boy agreed too. With their plans set, the 4 of them moved out, heading toward the most dangerous part of the ruins. At the same time, I was walking down a cracked, weed-choked street. This used to be a bustling downtown area, but now the shops were hollowed-out shells. I didn't care about the scenery, though. I was staring at my system interface. My stats were looking lethal: 181 vitality, 182 mental strength, and a senior-level spear technique. But the most important number was at the bottom: energy points, 2,413. My eyes lit up. I had raked in a fortune in the core zone. I noticed there was still no plus sign next to my rank, which confirmed my theory. I couldn't hit rank 1 until I got my hands on an official cultivation manual. The core zone is empty, I whispered to myself. If I want more points, I have to hit the dead zone. But there's a rank 2 beast there. I decided to prep. I looked at my skill, Flash Gale Break. I spent 100 points to bump it to intermediate. Then, I dropped another 200 to push it to advanced. Suddenly, my mind flooded with muscle memory. It felt like I had practiced that specific spear strike tens of thousands of times. I felt the lightning humming in my veins, sharper and more controlled than ever. Now I'm ready for that bear, I muttered. I was being careful with my points. I knew they'd be harder to get once the exam was over, and I'd need them for university. But for now, I was strong enough. I pulled out my last 2 energy bars, choked them down, and checked my map. The dead zone was a small area on the grid, but in reality, it was a sprawling luxury apartment complex called Jint's Gardens. As I approached the gates, I saw them. Dozens of beasts were lounging in the open courtyard. Usually, different species like shadow cats, iron-haired boars, and one-horned lizards would tear each other apart on sight. But here, they were peaceful. That only meant one thing. There was a king here keeping them in line. Deep in the shadows of the courtyard, I saw it. A massive gray bear, twice the size of a normal one, lay curled up like a mountain of fur and muscle. The bloodthirsty great bear. A rank 2 nightmare. I gripped my spear. It was time to finish this. The bear looked like a living tank. Its fur was matted and thick, and its eyes glowed a deep, bloody red, as if they held the weight of 1,000 killings. Just by sitting there, the beast radiated a pressure that made the air feel heavy. I wasn't the only one watching. High above, on the roof of an 8-story building nearby, Zhou Mingyang and his team were looking down. Their faces went pale the moment they spotted the creature. A bloodthirsty great bear, Zhou Mingyang muttered, his voice tight. Monsters have ranks, but even within the same rank, there's a hierarchy. A shadow cat could never beat a one-horned lizard because of racial suppression. Among the monster tribes, the bloodthirsty great bear was a rare and terrifying breed. Its strength was legendary, but its defense was even worse. That thick, knotted fur was tougher than most alloys. Even a direct hit from a missile wouldn't easily break it. Su Jingming is a lightning user, but this is going to be trouble, Zhou Mingyang whispered with a bitter smile. He knew the stakes. If it were a normal rank 2 beast, the 4 of them might have been able to hold it off for a while by working together. But against a bloodthirsty great bear, one swipe of that massive, iron pan-sized paw would crush them instantly. Nobody could tank a hit like that. And that's not even the worst part, the bald guy on their team added, pouting. We wouldn't even reach the bear. Those 30 rank 1 elites in the courtyard would tear us apart before we stepped foot on the grass. They were strong, sure. Together, they could maybe handle 3 or 4 high-tier rank 1 beasts. But 30? It was suicide. The jump in difficulty between the core zone and this dead zone was insane. In the core zone, the strongest things were mid-tier rank 1s. Here, the trash mobs were all high-tier, and the boss was a rank 2 nightmare. How are we supposed to play this? The small girl, Mengdi, grumbled. I heard old Lu was the one setting the exam questions this year. I didn't believe it then, but this twisted setup? It's definitely him. The long-haired guy next to her bit his lip. In Jiangnan province, the examiners rotated every year. Old Lu was famous for being a hard ass. Whenever he designed the exam, the mortality rate doubled. High-tier rank 1s and rank 2s were standard for the national exam, but old Lu always picked the most difficult species possible. We can't blame anyone but ourselves, Zhou Mingyang sighed. Our strength just isn't there yet. The martial arts exam was designed to filter the best from the best. This area was like the final, impossible bonus question on a math test. Only a true genius could solve it. Zhou Mingyang was a star in Jiang City, but on the provincial stage, he realized he didn't even have the right to attempt the final question. You know, the long-haired guy said, a hint of spite in his voice. Su Jingming has been running around like a maniac all day just to scrape together 3,000 points. But if someone could actually clear this courtyard, they'd earn points way faster than him. He wasn't wrong. Points in the dead zone were massive. Killing one high-tier rank 1 beast gave you 100 points. Killing that rank 2 bear? That was a 4,000-point jackpot in one go. The world needs elite powerhouses, not just people who can cull weaklings, the guy continued, clearly annoyed by Su Jingming's efficiency. Zhou Mingyang frowned but didn't argue. It was the truth. The exam looked for raw, overwhelming power. It was the same logic they used to defend the planet. If you could kill the rank 9 beast emperors, the rest of the monster tides would collapse. Killing 1,000,000 grunts didn't matter if the emperor was still breathing. That was why the points for rank 2 beasts were set so high. It was a lure for anyone aiming to be the provincial top scholar. Still, Zhou Mingyang thought to himself, if Su Jingming is useless, then what does that make us? We have even fewer points than he does. He kept that thought to himself. They needed to stay united. All right, enough talk. We'll try to lure them out one by one. If we can pull a few high-tier beasts away from the bear, we might get some points. If not, we head back to the middle zone. Luring monsters away from a rank 2 boss? Sounds like a suicide mission, someone joked. Everything's a suicide mission today. Let's go. They turned to head down the stairs, but then they froze. A black shadow was sprinting toward the apartment gates. It was moving with the speed of a cheetah, blurring across the pavement. In seconds, it reached the entrance of Jin's gardens. Su Jingming. Zhou Mingyang's eyes narrowed. Even from 8 stories up, his enhanced vision as an awakened allowed him to recognize the figure immediately. It was the same guy he'd met earlier. He's here? Where? Meng Di and the others scrambled back to the edge of the roof. They hadn't seen him in person yet, and were dying to know what the fuss was about. As their bodies had evolved, their senses had sharpened. The height didn't bother them. They looked down and saw a young man standing alone before the courtyard. He was tall, his face set in a mask of grim determination. His eyes were sharp, like a hawk scouting its prey. He looked like he'd crawled out of a war zone. His black combat suit was stained dark red with dried blood. But it was the spear on his back that caught their attention. The tip of the obsidian spear, which should have been sleek and sharp, was now jagged and dented, the mark of a weapon that had hacked through too much bone. There was something terrifying about him. The broken state of his weapon only made his aura feel more violent. He's actually kind of hot, Meng Di whispered, her eyes brightening. The bald guy was looking at the spear in shock. That's an L-grade alloy spear. To wear it down to that state, just how many monsters did he kill? I stood there before the gates, the weight of the world on my shoulders and a broken spear in my hand. My obsidian spear was a mess, its tip jagged and dented from hacking through bone. I knew the people on the roof were watching me. I could feel their eyes. They probably thought I was insane, walking right into a swarm of monsters like this. A long-haired guy up there let out a cold snort. He was right about one thing. The beasts were already moving. My presence was like a dinner bell. Within seconds, the air was filled with guttural roars. More than a dozen high-tier rank 1 monsters charged at me, their claws scraping against the pavement. He's dead. I heard a faint cry from above. It was Meng Di. I didn't blink. I saw the monsters closing in, their shadows stretching across the ground. For a moment, I let them get close. I wanted to see if my raw physical strength was enough. It wasn't. The sheer numbers were overwhelming. and I was quickly swallowed by a sea of fur, scales, and teeth. From the roof, Zhou Mingyang probably thought I'd vanished. He likely thought my rise to the top of the leaderboard was a fluke, a shooting star burning out before it even hit the horizon. He probably felt cheated, thinking I'd lied about my abilities until the very end. But I wasn't dying. I was just getting started. Divine Thunder, I whispered. The words were low, but they carried a weight that seemed to silence the world. Then, a sharp, ear-piercing crackle erupted. A massive purple shockwave exploded from my body, ripping outward like a tidal wave. The monsters closest to me didn't even have time to scream. The high-voltage current turned them into charred husks instantly. They were sent flying back, their bodies smoking as they hit the ground 5 meters away. The dense pack of monsters was wiped clean, like a drawing erased from a chalkboard. I stood in the center of the clearing, my tall frame wreathed in dancing purple bolts. The lightning hissed and chirped around me, sounding like 1,000 birds singing in unison. It felt like the elements were cheering for their king. Up on the roof, Zhou Mingyang was frozen. His mouth hung open. "He really does have a lightning talent," he muttered, his voice trembling. I looked down at my hands. Purple sparks leaped between my fingers. This was the S-Rank Purple Cloud Divine Thunder. Even though I was only an awakened, my high spirit and vitality stats made this power terrifying. It wasn't just lightning, it was destruction. But the real fight was just starting. The carnage had finally woken up the boss of this area. A bloodthirsty great bear rose from its slumber. It stood 5 meters tall and 3 meters wide, looking less like an animal and more like a heavy battle tank. The pressure it radiated was immense. It was a rare monster, the kind that made this year's exam feel like a death sentence. I licked my lips. The setting sun was behind the bear, casting a long, suffocating shadow over me. I couldn't see its face clearly, but its glowing red eyes locked onto mine with murderous intent. Inspired by their leader, the remaining monsters began to growl again, baring their teeth. This looks like a scene from a horror movie, I thought. But these small fry are going to get in the way. It was time to clear the field. I focused my mind. Instead of letting the lightning stay on the surface of my skin, I forced it deep into my body. My frame jolted as if I'd been injected with pure adrenaline. My vision turned completely purple. A massive surge of power flooded my limbs, making me feel like I could tear the world apart. I laughed, the sound wild and sharp. This was the most basic use of lightning, stimulating my cells to enhance my physical limits. I'd tried it before with weaker electricity, but it only made me feel numb. With the Purple Cloud Divine Thunder, it was different. I felt like a god. I knew I couldn't hold this state for long. It was dangerous. The lightning coursing through my veins could shred my internal pathways if I wasn't careful. But I didn't need long. I vanished. The lightning flashed, and I was gone. A split second later, I appeared next to a high-tier one-horned rhino. My spear moved like a streak of purple light, cutting through the air with a hiss. The rhino didn't even have time to grunt. A thin red line appeared across its neck. Then, its massive, armor-plated head slid off its shoulders as if I'd cut through warm butter. Blood sprayed into the air like a fountain, and the beast's mountain-sized body collapsed into the dirt. The headless body of the one-horned rhino collapsed into a pool of its own blood with a heavy thud. It was dead before it hit the ground. A roar ripped through the air. The bloodthirsty great bear couldn't take it anymore. Seeing its subordinate slaughtered right in front of it triggered its primal rage. It let out a deafening war cry and charged. Even with its massive frame, the bear was terrifyingly fast. It dropped to all fours, covering 30 meters in a heartbeat. It wasn't just running. It was leaping across the ruins like a fuzzy mountain of muscle. But as fast as the bear was, I was faster. With the Purple Cloud Divine Thunder surging through me, I became a blur of violet and black. I darted through the pack of monsters like a ghost. Every time I moved, my obsidian spear followed, trailing purple sparks as it harvested lives. A notification pinged in my mind. Killed high-tier beast, one-horned rhino. Points plus 15. I didn't stop. I spun, thrusting the spear through the skull of another beast. Killed high-tier beast, shadow spear. Points plus 13. Then another. Killed high-tier beast, blade-arm tiger. Points plus 14. The system alerts kept ringing in my head like a slot machine hitting the jackpot. Behind me, the bloodthirsty great bear let out bursts of helpless rage. It swiped and lunged, but it couldn't even touch my shadow. Up on the rooftop, Zhou Mingyang and his team were frozen. They looked like they'd seen a god descend. What kind of lightning talent is this? Zhou Mingyang whispered, his voice trembling. He's just an awakened. Even a level 1 talent shouldn't be this strong. The small girl, Meng Di, swallowed hard. She'd seen high-level lightning users on the internet before, but none of them felt this oppressive. The raw pressure coming from me was suffocating. It's stronger than a level 1, the bald student muttered, glancing at Zhou Mingyang. They both said it at the same time. S-Rank. Zhou Mingyang immediately shook his head. No, that's impossible. If he were S-Rank, the whole country would have known the day he awakened. The government records everything. They would have whisked him away to an elite training camp instantly. Why would an S-Rank be stuck in a place like Jiang City Second High? A mutation, the bald guy suggested. Zhou Mingyang went quiet for a second, then nodded. Maybe. It's rare, but it happens. There are stories of D ranks mutating into A ranks. But regardless of the rank, after today, all of Jiang City is going to be talking about him. He watched me, a lone figure with a black spear, dominating the battlefield and clearing the area with brutal efficiency. His expression was a mess of jealousy and awe. Meanwhile, outside the exam grounds, the atmosphere was even more chaotic. When I first appeared alone in front of the bear pack, the military clearing erupted in shouts. "What is Lin Yuan doing?" someone yelled. "Why did he walk right into their line of sight? Run! Get out of there!" The bureau director and the school principals were all level 2 experts. They could see the danger clearly. Fighting 2 or 3 high-tier beasts was one thing, but facing dozens plus a level 2 bloodthirsty great bear? That was suicide. The teachers from my school were screaming at the screen, telling me to run, but I couldn't hear them. They watched in horror as the swarm of monsters swallowed me up. "He's too arrogant," the director said, shaking his head. "Even if he survives by some miracle, his evaluation will plummet. The elite universities hate reckless behavior." Zhao Yao, the principal of my school, looked like he was about to faint. "Is our only genius going to die like this? Doesn't he have a safety ball?" my class teacher, Chen Fan, asked desperately. "Against that many beasts," Zhao Yao countered. "The high-voltage grid won't last 10 seconds against a pack of high tiers." He turned to the command center. "Commander Wang, please. Deploy the rescue team immediately." The rescue teams were seasoned veterans, elite level 1 fighters who worked in perfect sync. They were the last line of defense for top-tier candidates. Commander Wang nodded and grabbed his radio, his face grim. But just as he went to call them in, the projection screen exploded with light. A massive wave of purple lightning erupted from my body. The monsters surrounding me were blasted backward, their hides charred black as they hit the ground. I stood in the center of the crater, my eyes glowing with electricity. I looked less like a student and more like a god of war. I gripped my spear and began the slaughter. The level 2 bear tried to catch me, but I was playing with it, treating the most dangerous beast in the zone like a slow-moving toy. The reversal was so sudden the director and the principals were left speechless. This is Lin Yuan's lightning," Zhao Yao gasped. Director Zhang Wenshan turned to him, his eyes wide with shock. "Principal Zhao, you told me this kid was a level 1. Are you kidding me?" Back in the ruins, I was essentially walking the bear like a dog. The bloodthirsty great bear eventually realized it couldn't catch me. It stopped chasing, planting its massive body in the center of the clearing. Its red eyes tracked my every move, its aura growing darker and more violent with every subordinate I killed. There had been 34 high-tier beasts. 13 were already dead or dying from my initial lightning burst. The remaining 21? It took me exactly 1 minute to finish them all. With a final crackle of electricity, I landed softly, my spear dripping with blood. All that was left was the big one. I stood about 8 meters away from the bloodthirsty great bear, my body wreathed in purple electricity. The beast was smarter than I expected. It didn't chase me anymore. It just waited there, knowing I had to come to it. My eyes glowed with a fierce purple light. The bear was reaching its breaking point. Its chest heaved with every ragged breath, and its red eyes were cold, filled with a primal hatred. A weaker fighter would have collapsed just looking at it. I didn't blink. I raised my left hand and clenched it into a fist. The surrounding purple cloud divine thunder hissed, coiling around my arm before condensing into a jagged bolt of lightning. I hurled it. The bolt struck the bear dead center with a deafening boom. But as the smoke cleared, I saw the electricity just dancing across its skin. It hadn't done any real damage. It only made the beast look more demonic. I frowned. I forgot how these things worked. Unlike pets, these wild bears never clean their fur. Over time, the filth and hair mat together into a layer of natural armor as tough as grade 1 alloy. Worst of all, that matted fur was non-conductive. My lightning was top tier, but I was still just an awakened. Trying to bridge 2 major ranks to kill a level 2 beast with raw power was asking too much. I needed to break its defense first. The bear didn't give me time to think. It let out a roar that shook the ruins. A thick, red mist of blood energy erupted from its pores, swirling around it like a violent storm. Its muscles swelled, veins popping across its face like angry snakes. The ground beneath its paws began to tremble. Then it leaped. It looked like a freaking tank falling from the sky. I didn't test my luck. I threw myself to the side just as the beast slammed into the concrete where I had been standing. The impact was massive. A crater spiderwebbed outward, sending a cloud of dust into the air. When the dust settled, the bear stood there in its berserk state. It had traded its remaining intelligence for raw, slaughtering instinct. Usually, beasts only do this when they're about to die. I guess I'd annoyed it enough to make it skip the formalities. I wasn't going to play its game. It was 6 meters tall now, and I was barely 2. Going head-to-head would be suicide. I had to use my speed. My cells hummed, supercharged by the lightning. I moved. To any observer, I was just a purple blur. The bear sensed something was wrong, but it was too late. I reappeared at its side, my 50-kilogram obsidian spear whistling through the air. The blade bit deep into its left leg. A massive spray of crimson hit the pavement. The bear roared in pain and swung a paw the size of a dinner table at my head. I was already gone. Before its fist even hit the ground, I was behind its right leg. I repeated the motion, the sharp obsidian tip carving a second deep gash. The bear was huge, but it was clumsy. It couldn't keep up with me. Driven mad by the pain, the beast began smashing everything around it in a blind rage. It crushed the corpses of its own subordinates into pulp. I stayed back, watching. I pushed my purple cloud divine thunder to the absolute limit. I didn't go in for the kill yet. Instead, I stood at a distance and hammered it with bolt after bolt of lightning. The bear slowed down, its injured legs struggling to support its weight. It tried to curl into a defensive ball, thinking its fur would protect it from the worst of the shock. I kept the barrage up for 30 seconds straight. The bear's white-gray fur turned charred and black. That should do it, I muttered. I stepped forward, stopping just 3 meters from its face. It was close enough for the bear to kill me with a single step. It saw me and tried to lung, its eyes burning with fury. But then, its expression changed to one of pure terror. Its legs didn't move, its arms felt like lead. It thought its fur had blocked my attack, but it was wrong. My spear had already opened the gates. During that 30-second barrage, the electricity had poured into the open wounds on its legs, surging through its nervous system and paralyzing it from the inside out. The monster was a statue, a massive, helpless target. I gripped my spear with both hands, the purple lightning coiling around the black shaft like a hungry snake. It was time to end this. I felt the power of the purple cloud divine thunder coursing through me, wrapping around my body like the mantle of an ancient god. My vision sharpened. Every movement felt fluid, divine. I moved, my spear becoming a blur of black and purple light. In just 4 seconds, I struck dozens of times. I carved deep, gaping wounds into the bloodthirsty great bear's flesh, each one the size of a dinner plate. But I didn't just cut him. The lightning stayed behind, flickering inside the wounds and tearing at his insides with secondary shocks. If this had been any normal beast, it would have been dead 10 times over. But this was a rank 2 monster, 6 meters of muscle and stubborn life. To a creature this thick-skinned, these were still just flesh wounds. The bear's eyes snapped open. I saw the moment the paralysis wore off and feeling returned to its massive arms. A cruel, jagged grin spread across its snout. It thought it was time for a counterattack. It was wrong. I didn't give it a chance to breathe. I leaped into the air, soaring until I was eye level with its massive chest. My gaze was cold, my mind perfectly still. Flash gale break. I warred. The air exploded with the sound of a thunderclap. My spear erupted with a terrifying surge of purple energy. The bear tried to raise its arms to block, but it was too slow. The impact sounded like a bomb going off. The purple lightning detonated against its chest, sending a shockwave through the clearing. The bear didn't just fall, it flew. Its massive body skipped across the ground like a pebble on a pond, smashing through a stone fountain and carving a 15-meter trench into the earth before finally stopping. I landed softly and looked at my handiwork. A charred, smoking hole stared back at me from the left side of the bear's chest. Its heart was gone, vaporized by the strike. Only a few stray sparks of purple electricity remained, dancing around the edges of the cavity. The beast struggled. It tried to stand, its body shaking as its life force drained away. It took one wobbly step, then collapsed with a final, heavy thud. The monster that could have leveled a small town was dead. A notification pinged in my ear. Ding. Killed 1 rank, 2 lower tier, bloodthirsty great bear. 24 talent points added. I let out a long breath and leaned on my spear. Finally, it was over. That fight had pushed me to my absolute limit. Even though it lasted less than 2 minutes, the intensity was staggering. My blood energy and mental focus had been stretched to the breaking point. I wasn't really worried, though. Even if that last combo hadn't worked, I had over 2,000 talent points sitting in my system. I could have boosted my stats mid-fight if I had to. From the moment I stepped into this clearing, that bear was already dead. I deactivated my cell activation state. The purple glow faded from my eyes, and the lightning retreated back into my body. A wave of exhaustion hit me, but I knew it was just the sudden loss of that borrowed power. I wasn't actually weak. I was just back to my normal self. I wondered what my score looked like now. I tapped my smartwatch and the leaderboard popped up. First place, Lin Yuan, 10,835 points. Jiang City Second High School. Second place, Zhou Mingyang, 1,103 points. Jiang City First High School. Third place, Wu Hao, 945 points. Jiang City First High School. 10,000 points. Even though I expected a lot, seeing the number made my heart skip a beat. A slow smirk spread across my face. The core zone really was a goldmine. I remembered that last year's top score in the entire Jiangnan province was only around 8,000. That meant the title of provincial top scholar was already mine. I did the math quickly. A rank 1 upper tier beast was worth 100 points. A rank 2 was worth 4,000. Between the 34 high-level beasts I'd cleared and the big bear, I'd raked in over 7,000 points in this area alone. Adding that to my previous score, I had 10 times more points than the guy in second place. It was almost comical. I checked the time. There was still over an hour left in the exam. The core is empty, I muttered, looking around at the carnage. Time to head back to the middle zone. Might as well squeeze out every point I can. I slung my obsidian spear, now battered and nearly ruined, onto my back and started walking. I didn't look back at the bear. Meanwhile, up on a nearby roof, Zhou Mingyang and his team were frozen in shock. They had watched the whole thing. The bear, it's actually dead? Zhou Mingyang whispered, swallowing hard. From start to finish, the fight had taken less than 2 minutes. A rank 2 beast usually took a team of elite fighters half an hour of careful maneuvering to take down. This wasn't just a victory, it was a slaughter. Look at the score, one of the boys gasped, his voice trembling. He's over 10,000. He's going to be the provincial top scholar, isn't he? The group fell silent, the weight of that realization hitting them like a physical blow. Look, one of them shouted, pointing. Lin Yuan is moving again. He's heading back to the middle zone.